Now, my friend, allow your body to rest. There is nothing you must accomplish in this moment. There is nowhere you need to go. Nothing that requires your effort. Nothing that calls for your struggle. If you are lying down, let the weight of your body sink naturally into the surface that supports you. If you are seated, feel the gentle stillness settling through your spine. Let the muscles soften. Let the breath slow without force. Do not try to breathe deeply. Simply allow breathing to return to its own quiet rhythm. I am not asking you to concentrate. I am not asking you to strive. I am asking you to rest. For the greatest movements in this world are born not from strain, but from surrender. The morning does not struggle to arrive. The sun does not labor to rise. The stars do not wrestle the darkness to shine. All things occur by yielding to their own nature. And you, too, have a nature that is effortless. There has been planted within you a power so silent, so gentle, that it withdraws when you demand, yet rushes forward the moment you relax. This power is not activated by force. It is awakened by trust. So tonight I invite you not to do anything heroic, not to exert your will, not to prove yourself. I invite you to lay down the burden of effort and to discover what happens when you no longer push against life. The world has taught you that creation requires labor, that success demands strain, that change must be earned through struggle. But what if this belief has been the very chain that bound you? What if the door you have been seeking opens only when the hand relaxes? There is a quiet law that governs all things. It moves without sound. It never announces itself. Yet it leaves its signature everywhere. Look at the river. It does not shout. It does not hurry. Yet in its gentle patience, it carves mountains. Look at the seed buried beneath the soil. It does not panic. It does not question its worth. Yet in hidden silence, it becomes the forest. Look at your own heart. It learned its rhythm without instruction. It has beaten faithfully, through joy and sorrow alike. It did not ask for guidance. It simply obeyed the law of life. And the same law that breathes through rivers, seeds, and hearts breathes through you. This law does not respond to desperation. It responds to equilibrium. It does not answer panic. It answers poise. It does not move at the command of fear. It moves at the invitation of faith. So now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the mind begins to loosen its grip, you are entering the very state where this law becomes most receptive. You have spent long hours striving, long days hoping, long nights worrying. You have rehearsed the future with anxiety. You have relived the past with regret. But in this moment, you are free of both. This moment requires nothing of you. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw loosen. Let the forehead smooth itself. Let the tongue rest quietly behind the teeth. Every signal of effort may now dissolve. You are not being measured. You are not being judged. You are not being tested. You are simply being held by life. The soul does its finest work when the mind steps aside. I have observed this truth all my life. I have seen men exhaust themselves chasing what would have come effortlessly had they only rested in the certainty of possession. I have seen women strain for affection that would have arrived naturally had they first accepted themselves as loved. The world convinces us that only through tension does progress arise. Yet every true breakthrough is preceded by stillness. Even the storm is born from silence. In this quiet space between thoughts, creation begins. Not in noise, not in argument, not in desperation, but in the gentle knowing that precedes form. You do not need to make anything happen tonight. You are only invited to allow the mind to sink. Allow the breath to slow. Allow the thoughts to soften at the edges. If a memory appears, let it drift past like a cloud. If an idea rises, let it pass without resistance. You need not follow any thought. You need not solve anything. This is not the hour for solutions. This is the hour for surrender. When a man abandons the struggle against sleep, sleep claims him. When a woman ceases to chase calm, calm envelops her. You have never fallen asleep by force. You have only fallen asleep by letting go. And creation operates the same way. The world you experience tomorrow is not born from what you force tonight. It is born from what you consent to in stillness. So let us quiet the habit of effort. There is an intelligence within you far older than your worries, far wiser than your doubts. It knows how to breathe, it knows how to heal, it knows how to arrange circumstances beyond your planning. This intelligence does not need instruction, it only needs permission, and permission is given through relaxation. In yielding, you rise. In resting, you move. In letting go, you receive. The thinking mind has carried you far, but it cannot carry you into the realm where dreams take flesh. That crossing happens when thought releases its authority and sensation becomes sovereign. Notice now the gentle heaviness in the arms, the subtle warmth behind the eyes, the slow, unhurried expansion of the chest. The body knows how to enter silence. Trust the body. It has been practicing surrender every night of your life. There is no urgency here, no deadline, no destination you must reach before morning. The universe does not keep time as you do. It does not rush. It does not wait. It simply unfolds. And you are part of that unfolding. Long before you learned the word effort, you manifested effortlessly. As a child, you believed without calculation. You expected without justification. You assumed without defense. You imagined, and life complied. But then you were taught to question. You were taught to doubt. You were taught to weigh. And so your gifts became bargains. Tonight you lay those contracts down. You need not persuade the world. You need not plead with fate. You need not calculate the path. The power that arranges the stars does not ask for your strategy. It asks only for your trust. And trust is not manufactured. It arises when tension dissolves. So let tension dissolve. If worry whispers, do not fight it. Let it speak and then let it fade. If anticipation stirs, do not accelerate it. Let it slow itself into quiet confidence. You are safe here. Nothing is required. Nothing is demanded. Creation is at rest within you. There is a state of consciousness deeper than desire and older than fear. From that state, all desires are born already complete. Tonight, you approach that state not by climbing, but by sinking. Sinking into stillness, sinking into softness, sinking into ease. The breath moves without instruction. The heart continues without effort. The night holds you without question. You too may be held without anxiety. You do not need to manage life. Life is already managing itself through you. The only labor now is to stop laboring. Rest, let the muscles slacken, let the pulse slow, let the weight of the day dissolve. You are not behind, you are not late, you are not lacking. All that is needed arrives through rest. The universe has never responded to your exhaustion. It responds to your composure. Men do not drown because the ocean is deep. They drown because they fight the water. And so stop fighting. Float. The water knows how to carry you. Silence now begins to gather at the edges of your awareness. The thoughts grow softer. The intervals between them lengthen. You are entering the threshold where creation listens most attentively. Here, nothing is demanded. Here, everything is possible. But possibility does not shout. It whispers, and whispers require stillness to be heard. So be still. If sleep comes, let it come. If wakefulness lingers, let it linger. You are not required to control either. You are only required to cease controlling. Tonight is not a night for conquest. It is a night for consent. And in consent, forces older than your striving begin to move. The seed does not awaken by command. It awakens by warmth. The tide does not answer orders. It answers the moon. And your life too answers to something deeper than your effort. It answers to your state of being. And being is easiest when nothing is forced. So rest now in the simple recognition that you do not need to push against tomorrow. Tomorrow is already on its way. The very fact that you are here, listening, relaxing, releasing control, signals a shift already in motion. You need not monitor it. You need not supervise it. You need not assist it. All assistance comes through surrender. The ancient impulse to strive dissolves in the presence of this quiet knowing. And what remains is recognition. Recognition that the power you sought through action has always lived in stillness. Recognition that the door you tried to open through effort unlocks through ease. Recognition that the life you long for does not respond to chase, only to assumption. But tonight, I will not yet speak of assumption. Tonight, I will only give you rest. The soil must soften before the seed is placed. The water must still before it reflects the stars. And your awareness must quiet before it receives new instruction. So be quiet now, not by discipline, by permission. Let go of the idea that you must hold yourself together. Life is holding you now. There is nothing to defend, nothing to fix, nothing to explain, only to rest. And as you rest, something profound is already happening beneath the surface of your awareness. The effort that once pushed against the world is dissolving, and in its place, a gentler force is awakening. A force that does not demand, a force that does not strain, a force that does not argue with reality, a force that simply knows you need not understand it yet. Understanding will come later. For now, let only the body soften, the breath slow, the mind drift. This is the gateway. This is the doorway. And you have stepped through it without effort. As I rest with you in this quietness, there is something that gently rises into awareness, not as an idea to be debated, not as a theory to be discussed, but as a calm recognition, something that I have observed again and again through the years, in myself, in students, in strangers, in lives that transformed without noise. There is a law operating always. It does not announce itself. It does not seek belief. It does not demand permission. It simply works. Long before I ever spoke a word about it, long before anyone ever asked me for explanation, this law was already shaping destinies in silence. It guided the rise of some and the quiet undoing of others. It moved men from poverty to abundance without a single trumpet sounding. It returned lovers to each other without a single plan being formed. It opened door after door where reason declared only walls. And through all these years of watching, one thing became unmistakably clear to me. This law does not respond to effort. I have seen men exhaust themselves with the greatest determination only to remain exactly where they began. And I have seen others do almost nothing at all, and yet arrive with startling swiftness at the very place the first longed for. Effort may impress the world of appearances, but this deeper law answers something else entirely. It answers the state of being, not what a man says he wants, not how hard a woman tries, not how desperately one pleads with circumstance. It answers what one quietly is. It is a law that moves without noise, without announcement, without visible machinery. It creates as the night creates the dawn, without effort, without debate, without delay. All through my life, I have seen that events do not spring from argument. They do not arise from protest. They do not unfold according to struggle. They emerge from condition, from inner climate, from the silent arrangement of consciousness. A man may proclaim wealth with his lips, while every nerve within him agrees only with scarcity. And the law answers the nerves, not the lips. A woman may speak confidently of love, while her entire feeling agrees with rejection. And the law answers the feeling, not the speech. This is why so many words go unanswered. They were spoken from the wrong state. The law is not persuaded. It is not convinced. It is not swayed by emotion alone. It reflects. It mirrors. It echoes what already lives within. Through long observation, I learned that life never responds to what we request. It only responds to what we consent to be. This is not philosophy. This is not metaphor. This is a description of a functioning order. A seed placed into fertile soil responds to condition, not desire. If the soil is ready, the seed unfolds. If the soil is barren, no pleading will quicken it. So too with consciousness. The inner state is the soil, and what appears in life is the inevitable growth. Yet most live as though the reverse were true. They wait for the outer world to give permission for inner change. They wait for conditions to soften before they allow themselves to feel secure. They wait for proof before they accept the feeling of having, and in waiting they delay. For the law does not wait upon the world. The world waits upon the law. I have seen men alter their fortunes without altering their surroundings. I have watched women change their entire future while sitting alone in silence. And those watching from the outside, unaware of this invisible law, called it coincidence, luck, chance. There is no chance here, only correspondence, only reflection, only the echo of inner agreement. This law creates without sound. It never shouts when it works. It alters futures with such quiet precision that the mind often tries to trace the change to some visible cause, some external explanation, because it cannot accept that the source was invisible. And yet, it always was. You see, the world of form is late. It always arrives after the inner decision has already been made, long after the feeling has been occupied, long after the state has been entered. The outer world is only the delayed photograph of an earlier inner condition. But because the delay exists, men assume separation. They believe the outer world is independent. They believe events form the inner man. They believe circumstances sculpt character. They believe fate comes from outside. Yet through quiet watching, I learned the opposite. Character precedes fate. State precedes circumstance. Being precedes doing. This is the law. It never creates from action. It creates from attitude. I have observed people perform the same actions with entirely different results. One struggles, the other flows. One forces, the other attracts. One battles life, the other seems carried by it. And the difference was never knowledge. It was never intelligence. It was never external advantage. It was always state. One lived inwardly as though success were natural. The other lived inwardly as though obstruction were obvious, and the law agreed with each. This is why effort alone has no creative power. It may rearrange furniture in the house of life, but it does not lay the foundation. The foundation is always laid in silence. Through many years of teaching, I learned something that is difficult for the striving mind to accept. The law does not move when we try to move it. It moves when we stop interfering. It responds to what is already assumed, already accepted, already lived as inward fact. I did not first discover this law in books. I discovered it by watching what actually worked when everything else failed. I saw people pray tirelessly and remain unchanged. I saw others pray little and yet transform completely. When I traced the difference, I found it was never in the length of prayer. It was never in the wording. It was always in the inward position from which the prayer rose. One prayed from hunger. The other prayed from possession. And the law answered possession. This realization came upon me gently, not as a thunderclap. It emerged little by little through observation, through watching people assume themselves into ruin as naturally as breathing, through watching others assume themselves into safety without knowing why it worked. Men do not fall into poverty by accident. They fall into agreement with it. Men do not rise into freedom by chance. They enter into accord with it. The law does not punish. It confirms. It takes no sides. It reflects. It is impartial as gravity and just as exact. This is why pleading never alters it. Begging does not persuade it. Desperation does not move it. For the law recognizes only what is already accepted as true inwardly, not what is hoped for, not what is feared, not what is pretended, only what is quietly assumed as fact. Yet I will not name this yet. Tonight I allow it to approach you in the same way it approached me, gently, through familiarity, through recognition. As you listen, you may suddenly notice moments from your own life rising to the surface. Times when things shifted without effort. Times when doors opened without force. Times when what you wanted arrived with such ordinary simplicity that you almost dismissed it. Those moments were not accidental. They were moments when you were in accord. Moments when you were not wrestling the world. Moments when you inwardly agreed with the outcome before it appeared. Likewise, You may recall moments when all effort failed, when trying only created resistance, when pushing only created delay, when longing only deepened absence. Those too were not accidents. The law was working then as well. It was confirming opposition. It was reflecting inner division. It was echoing the state of not having. Everything that comes to you arrives along the invisible pathways of state. No event enters your experience without first passing through the gate of your own inner acceptance. Yet most people live as though events invade them, as though circumstances ambush them, as though fate attacks without invitation. This belief in invasion produces fear, and fear produces more invasion. For the law recognizes fear as a state and reflects it faithfully. There is nothing mystical about this. There is only correspondence. A mirror does not judge the face placed before it. It does not reward beauty. It does not punish scars. It simply reflects. So the law reflects your inward posture toward life. If you lean inwardly toward safety, safety appears. If you lean inwardly toward struggle, struggle repeats. If you lean inwardly toward abundance, abundance rearranges itself toward you, always without noise, always without announcement, always without visible machinery. Men search wildly for secret causes. They attribute success to cleverness, to timing, to advantage, to fate. They attribute failure to enemies, to obstacles, to circumstances. And so long as they look outward, they remain blind to the silent engine that never stops working within them. This engine requires no fuel but agreement. It does not accelerate with force. It accelerates with acceptance. I have watched men stand in the same room, under the same sky, with the same opportunity before them. One rises, the other remains unchanged. The difference was never the room. It was never the sky. It was never the opportunity. It was the state from which each interpreted what stood before him. One saw inevitability. The other saw uncertainty. And the law matched each vision precisely. Through these observations, one truth became unavoidable to me. The outer world is not creative. It is only responsive. It responds with astonishing obedience to what has already been decided within. This is why argument with circumstance is useless. You may debate the reflection endlessly, but the mirror will not change until the face changes. Yet men debate reflections all their lives. They argue with poverty. They argue with sickness. They argue with loneliness. They argue with delay. And in arguing, they persist in acknowledging the very thing they wish to escape. They speak of obstacles as though they were independent forces. They speak of fate as though it were a tyrant. They speak of chance as though it were sovereign. But the law knows none of these names. It recognizes only states. Through all my watching, I discovered that life never asks a man what he wants. It only asks what he accepts as natural. The one who accepts struggle as natural struggles faithfully. The one who accepts ease as natural experiences harmony. The one who accepts rejection as natural meets it everywhere. The one who accepts love as natural encounters it again and again. The law does not discriminate. It confirms. It does not debate. It executes. This is why force fails. Force is testimony that the desired state has not yet been accepted as natural. If it were accepted, force would be unnecessary. You never force yourself to breathe. You never force yourself to digest. You never force your heart to beat. These things were accepted as natural long ago, and so they happen without effort. Creation obeys the same principle. What is accepted as natural happens. What is disputed inwardly resists. This is not punishment. It is precision. The unseen law that shapes your days is not emotional. It is exact. It does not require belief in itself in order to function. It does not ask for recognition. It operates whether you acknowledge it or not. It moves in the faithful stillness of truth. Just as gravity continues whether one accepts it or denies it, so this law continues whether it is named or ignored. The only question is what it will continue to reflect for you. And that answer lies not in your effort, but in your inward posture. Long before I ever spoke of any principle publicly, this understanding rewired my own relationship with life. I discovered that when I ceased struggling against circumstance and instead adjusted what I quietly consented to be true, the outer world shifted with astonishing speed. It did not shift dramatically. It shifted naturally. So naturally that had I not known the inner cause, I too might have called it coincidence. But coincidence is only the name given to events whose inner origin has been forgotten. Nothing occurs without origin, and the origin is always inner. So tonight, as the body rests and the mind softens, this quiet truth begins to approach your awareness gently. You are not asked to change anything yet. You are only invited to notice how often you measure life by effort, how often you equate struggle with value, how often you believe that what comes easily must be unworthy. All these are assumptions, but we will not name that yet. For now, it is enough to feel the calm recognition that something deeper than effort governs your days, something you have always lived with, something you have always used, even when you did not know its name. And while you rest, this law continues to operate as it always has, quietly, obediently, without noise. As the mind grows quieter and the body forgets its own weight, there is a realization that begins to rise as softly as dawn. It does not arrive as a shock. It arrives as remembrance, as though something ancient within you is nodding in recognition, saying quietly, "Yes, this is what I always knew. I discovered long ago that imagination is not what the world told us it was. It is not idle fantasy. It is not childish invention. It is not a fragile escape from reality. Imagination is the womb of reality. It is the substance from which every visible thing is born. There is not a single object, not a single event, not a single circumstance that did not first exist as an imaginal act. The world believes that imagination follows life. I learned that life follows imagination. Every house was once an image. Every road was once a thought. Every relationship was once a feeling. Every fortune was once an inward assumption. Nothing that now feels solid began as solid. I did not accept this as theory. I accepted it as observation. I watched men dismiss imagination as illusion, and I watched illusion reshape their lives without permission. I watched women cling to past images and unknowingly rebuild the same sorrow again and again. I watched entire destinies repeat themselves because the inner picture never changed. And I learned this: the world cannot help but follow the image held within. There is no exception. You may call imagination weak, but it is the only creative power there is. You may mock it as fantasy, but all fact is fantasy made visible. You may treat it as a servant, but it is the master you serve, whether you acknowledge it or not. The invisible always precedes the visible. Long before the body moves, the state has already shifted. Long before the word is spoken, the feeling has already been entertained. Long before the event arrives, the imaginal scene has already been lived. You do not see first, and then imagine. You imagine first, and then see. This is why the world seems to echo you. This is why familiar patterns follow you. This is why faces change, but stories feel the same. This is why situations repeat themselves with uncanny loyalty. Life is not repeating events. Life is repeating imaginal acts. And now, as you listen, the body itself begins to feel less central. The muscles loosen not only from tension, but from identity. The sense of me as form softens at the edges. You begin to observe rather than inhabit the body. You begin to notice that awareness is not located in the flesh, but attends it. This is the doorway through which imagination reveals itself. For imagination is not in the head. It is not confined to the skull. It is the very field of awareness in which both body and world appear. I discovered that when imagination changes, the body must follow. When imagination shifts, the world reorganizes itself in silent obedience. When imagination releases the past, the future rearranges itself without negotiation. This is not poetry. This is architecture. The inner world is the blueprint. The outer world is the structure. Builders do not consult the walls to change the design. They change the drawing. And so it is with man. All along, humanity has attempted to rearrange the outer structure while worshipping an unchanged blueprint. They struggle against appearances while preserving the imaginal cause. They resist symptoms while nurturing the disease, and so they grow weary without transformation. For the world does not listen to hands. It listens to assumption. It does not respond to motion. It responds to meaning. It does not bow to action. It bows to state. Through quiet experiment, I learned that people never act independently of their imaginal identity. A man behaves not according to what he desires, but according to who he feels himself to be. A woman chooses not according to logic, but according to her inward self-definition. And the world answers not desires, but identities. You do not act into a new state. You act from the state you already occupy. And your imagination is the gateway into state. Whenever you imagine, you are not entertaining shadows. You are stepping into identity. You are entering a room in the house of consciousness. And having entered, you cannot help but behave from that room. Man believes he chooses freely, yet he always chooses from state. That is why the same man may act heroically one day and cowardly the next. The same woman may speak with confidence 1 hour and tremble with insecurity the next. The state has shifted, and with it, behavior rearranges automatically. Action is the fruit, not the root, and now you begin to perceive how gently yet how powerfully imagination governs. The world you touch is dense imagination. The body you inhabit is densified assumption. The circumstances that surround you are frozen feeling. Nothing appears randomly. All is ordered by inner agreement. This is why to fight appearances is to wrestle shadows. To argue with circumstance is to debate a reflection. To hate effects is to misunderstand causes. Change the image, and the reflection must transform. I watched this law work through the simplest of experiments. A man who imagined himself respected found respect, where once there was disregard. A woman who imagined herself valued watched indifference dissolve into devotion. A student who imagined success found doors opening with such naturalness that he wondered why he had ever feared. They did not persuade the world. They persuaded themselves, and the world complied. For the world must comply. It has no alternative. Yet, mankind is trained to worship the visible and panic before it. He trusts the echo and doubts the voice. He bows to the shadow and fears the source. He says, I will believe it when I see it, not knowing that he will never see it until he believes it. For seeing follows imagining as thunder follows lightning. I learned that what you consent to inwardly, you eventually encounter outwardly. Consent is all that is required. Not effort, not merit, not sacrifice. Consent, you live in continuous agreement with something. The only question is what? Some consent to fear and meet it faithfully. Some consent to lack and confirm it endlessly. Some consent to love and discover it everywhere. But no one escapes consent, for imagination does not ask permission to work. It only asks direction. Nature itself bows to imagination. The body reorganizes according to belief. Strength increases where strength is assumed. Weakness persists where weakness is accepted. Youth lingers where youth is inwardly claimed. Decline accelerates where decline is inwardly expected. These things are not controlled by years. They are governed by images. And now, as you rest between body and dream, you are entering the most fluid region of imagination. Here, images are not yet rigid. Here, assumptions are not yet frozen. Here, identity is not anchored to history. Here, you may separate from the past without struggle. The past has no substance of its own. It is sustained only through continued imagining. It survives by repetition of inner picture. The moment you cease to imagine from the past, it loses its authority. The moment you withdraw emotional life from old images, they collapse like shadows deprived of light. You are not bound to memory. You are bound only to continuity of imagining. This is why a man may relive childhood wounds into old age, while another outgrows them in a single hour. The difference is not time. The difference is identity. One continues to imagine from the wound, the other steps out of it. And stepping out is purely imaginal. The body follows, life follows, circumstances follow. I learned that one need not drag the past forward as a burden. The past is not attached to you. You attach to the past, and tonight, as the mind loosens its grip on story and history, you begin to sense the extraordinary freedom of awareness not bound to time. You are not your body, you are not your name, you are not your age, you are not your memories. These are garments. You are the wearer. Imagination is the tailor, and you change garments not by effort, but by assumption. If you assume you are the man you once were, the same world will echo. If you assume you are the woman you once were, the same life will repeat. But the moment you quietly assume something new, the echoes change, and life must rearrange itself to match. All action then becomes automatic. I do not mean that you strain to picture. I do not mean that you force images onto the mind. I mean that you shift what you consent to be true about yourself. The most powerful imaginal act is not seeing scenes, it is feeling identity. Scenes pass, identity remains. You may imagine riches in passing and remain poor in identity. And the law answers identity. You may imagine love in passing and remain lonely in identity. And the law answers identity. It is not what you visualize, it is who you inhabit yourself to be. And the entry into that being is imagination. Every time you say inwardly, without words, "This is who I am," you have performed an imaginal act more powerful than any picture. And now your awareness begins to detach from the surface of life. The body becomes distant, the room becomes faint, the world becomes quieter, and something vast begins to open behind your thoughts. This vastness is imagination itself, not as fantasy, not as memory, but as living presence. Here, you see that the world is not happening to you, it is happening through you. It is not acting upon you, it is responding from you. And once this is seen, blame evaporates, fear loosens its hold, the need to struggle weakens. For who would fear the echo when the voice is his own? Who would fight the shadow when the light stands within him? You are not separate from the power that shapes your days. You are seated at the very center of it. You have always been there. You simply mistook the surface for the source. The world taught you to trust what you can touch. It never taught you to trust what you are. And so you learn to bow before appearances while doubting the throne within. But now, as you float between waking and sleep, the throne reveals itself. You begin to feel that your awareness is not located inside the world. The world is located inside your awareness. This is not speculation, it is direct knowing. The sound of my voice appears in you. The sensation of the body appears in you. The memory of your life appears in you. The image of tomorrow appears in you. And you, the one in whom all of this appears, remain unmoved, unshaken, unchanged. This unmoved witness is imagination itself. It does not age. It does not fear. It does not hurry. It does not resist. It assumes. And the world follows. You see now why every great transformation begins in secrecy. Why the world is always the last to know. Why miracles appear ordinary to those who witness them only from the surface. The miracle occurred earlier in silence. You separate now from the problem, not by solving it, but by ceasing to inhabit the state that gave it life. You separate from the past, not by erasing memory, but by withdrawing identity. You separate from the body, not by leaving it, but by seeing that it follows you. And in that separation, space opens. Possibility widens. The future softens. There is no urgency here, only revelation. You are not trying to change your life. You are discovering that your life has always been changing in response to your own secret occupation of state. You were never powerless. You were never at the mercy of chance. You were never ruled by circumstance. You were ruled only by the images you entertained as truth. And the moment this is seen, not as doctrine, not as philosophy, but as inner recognition, the chains of struggle weaken without effort. For who strains to climb when he realizes he has always been standing at the summit? This is why the wise speak softly. They are not trying to persuade. They are pointing back to what you already are. Tonight you are not learning something new. You are remembering something ancient. Your imagination is not your escape from life. It is the source of life. And now you begin to feel it not as an idea, but as a presence. Quiet, vast, creative, holding within it every world you have ever known, and every world you have yet to inhabit. There came a moment in my own awakening when all searching ceased at once, not because every question was answered, but because I discovered the place from which all questions arise. It was not found in books, nor temples, nor teachers, nor philosophies. It was found in a single realization so simple that the mind struggled to comprehend its enormity. I discovered that the name of God is not a word spoken in reverence, nor a sound whispered in prayer, but a feeling declared in identity. The name of God is I am. Not I will be, not I was, but I am. This is not a religious statement. It is an existential fact. It is the center from which all experience radiates. Before you can say what you are, before you can describe your condition, your fortune, your limitations, your hopes, you must first utter silently within yourself, I am. And whatever follows those words becomes the mold into which life must pour itself. You do not live in a universe of chance. You live in a universe of declarations. Every human destiny begins with two words that are spoken inwardly, often without awareness. I am, and whatever you attach to those words becomes the garment you wear in the world. I am weak. I am unfortunate. I am unloved. I am overlooked. And life, obedient and impartial, says very well, you shall experience what you have named yourself to be. For the world does not ask whether your I am is wise, it only asks whether it is assumed. I became aware that man does not pray to God. Man prays from God. For the I am within him is the very presence he seeks in heavens and halls. The moment you say, I am, you are standing at the throne of creation, whether you know it or not. This is why every affirmation works not by repetition, but by identity. You may speak 1,000 hopeful phrases, but if the I am beneath them remains unchanged, the world will remain unchanged with it. It is not what you say you want that governs you. It is what you consent to be. You may desire freedom, yet quietly declare, I am trapped. You may desire wealth, yet constantly feel, I am lacking. You may desire love, yet secretly assume, I am unchosen. And the world will confirm the secret, not the spoken. For the law always answers the deepest assumption. It never answers the performance. I learned that a man does not rise because he works harder. He rises because he assumes himself to be one who rises. A woman does not become radiant because others approve of her. She becomes radiant because she assumes herself to be chosen first. Everything is assumption before it becomes fact. When I say that I am is the name of God, I am not speaking of a deity in form. I am speaking of the only creative center there is awareness, declaring being. God is not separate from you. God is your awareness of being. When you say, I am, you are touching the creative root of the universe. And when you add a name to that root, the tree of your life bears fruit accordingly. If you say, I am forgotten, life arranges itself around forgetting you. If you say, I am blessed, life moves to display its blessing. If you say, I am late, existence becomes delay. If you say, I am chosen, the world begins to choose you. This is why two people may walk the same road, live in the same era, breathe the same air, and inhabit entirely different worlds. One lives in the state of I am unfortunate, and meets fortune's shadow everywhere. The other lives in I am favored, and encounters invisible assistance at every step. They do not live in the same reality. They live in the same world, obeying different commands. And the command is always the I am. Most men think fate is written in their history. I learned that fate is written only in present identity. The past has no power except the power you grant it through continued self-definition. You do not remain poor because of where you were born. You remain poor because of who you continue to be. You do not remain alone because of what has happened. You remain alone because of what you assume yourself to be. The past is not a prison. It is an echo of former identity. Change the I am, and the echo must change also. Yet this is not done through force. It is done through quiet occupancy. You do not argue with your former self. You simply move into a new one and allow the old to dissolve from lack of use. Identity is a dwelling place, and you always live somewhere. Tonight, as you rest on the edge of waking and sleep, the gates of identity are wide open. This state is neither rigid nor defended. The mind is no longer clinging to yesterday's labels. The body is no longer rehearsing old reactions. The world, for a moment, is not demanding that you continue to be who you were. This is the doorway. The I am is never tired. The I am is never wounded. The I am is never aging. It only wears the garments you choose, and you choose them not through effort, but through quiet consent. Whatever you now allow yourself to be in feeling, you soon must experience as fact. If you allow yourself to be worthy, worthiness begins to appear in the way others meet you. If you allow yourself to be powerful, situations rearrange to confirm that strength. If you allow yourself to be secure, fear loosens its grip and retreats naturally. You do not have to convince the world. You only have to stop contradicting your own I am. For many live in divided speech. They say with the mouth, I am confident, while whispering with the soul, I am afraid. And the law always obeys the whisper. The louder voice is not the spoken one. It is the felt one. The world does not respond to declarations made in desperation. It responds to identity assumed in stillness. And now you begin to feel that subtle authority rising in the chest and spreading through the body, not arrogance, not pride, but certainty, without tension. This is the authority of I am, not the authority to dominate, but the authority to be. When you enter this state, you no longer need to prove yourself. Proof becomes unnecessary. When identity is secure, validation becomes irrelevant. When being is settled, struggle loses its purpose. When assumption becomes stable, most seek power in action. They exhaust themselves trying to climb ladders of effect. Yet the throne was always beneath their awareness. You do not rise to power. You awaken to it, and awakening requires only recognition. Recognition that the words I am are not description. They are decree. Every morning when a man rises and inwardly feels, I am tired, he does not describe a condition. He commands his nervous system, his focus, and his posture to obey that identity. Every evening when a woman says inwardly, I am unwanted, she does not report a fact. She instructs life how to continue meeting her. The law does not judge these commands. It does not question them. It fulfills them. I realized that the most dangerous prayers are not those spoken in fear, but those spoken casually as identity. A man may never formally pray for lack, but if he lives in the mood of I am unlucky, he has prayed without ceasing, and life answers without ceasing. The good news, if one may call it that, is that the same law that binds also releases. The same door that imprisons also liberates. The same I am that built the old world can build the new one without resistance. You do not need a ceremony. You do not need permission. You do not need to be worthy. You only need to assume, and assuming is not pretending. It is consenting. It is the quiet act of inward agreement with a different state of being. When a man says, not with lips, but with acceptance, I am secure, the nervous system aligns, the breath softens, the posture lifts, the eyes meet the world differently, and the world, faithful servant that it is, responds by providing mirrors of security. Not immediately, always, but inevitably. For the law is precise, not hurried. I discovered that God does not test man. Man tests God constantly with his I am, and God answers with unchanging faithfulness. This is why I no longer speak of prayers in the old sense. I speak of states. To enter a state is to pray. To occupy an identity is to petition the universe. To remain in a feeling is to command the future. You do not need to beg. You need to be. And being is always singular. You cannot be two things at once. You cannot be secure and insecure at the same time. One may flicker briefly, but the dominant identity always triumphs. So the work is not addition, it is subtraction. You do not acquire power. You release contradiction. The moment the I am unworthy, identity is dropped. Worthiness reveals itself without effort. The moment I am behind in life dissolves. Timing reorganizes. The moment I am failing disappears. Success begins to approach without announcement. For the world was never resisting you. It was merely repeating you. Now you begin to feel that your very sense of me is loosening from old definitions. The name you once answered to feels less binding. The story you once told about yourself feels less convincing. The future that once frightened you begins to seem strangely pliable. This is the authority of I am awakening, not as dominance, but as authorship. You are no longer merely a character in the play. You begin to remember that you are also the writer. And this knowing carries a gravity so still that the mind becomes quiet in its presence. One does not chatter before a throne. One grows silent before it. The I am does not hurry. It does not reason. It does not defend. It simply is, and the world rushes to agree. Here lies the great reversal. Man thinks he must change the world so that he may become. But in truth, he must become, so that the world may change. Action follows being. Effect follows cause. The world follows the I am. You cannot escape your assumptions, but you can change them. And when you do, you are not altering circumstances. You are altering the source from which circumstances flow. This is not mystical language. This is experiential law. I tested it not in grand miracles alone, but in small daily shifts, in the way people spoke to me, in the invitations that arrived unasked, in the resolutions that appeared without struggle, in the doors that opened before I had thought to seek them. It did not feel like power. It felt like alignment. And alignment requires no effort. It only requires recognition. Recognition that you are not the beggar at the gate of life. You are the one who decides what may enter and what may pass by. You are the I am. And as this awareness settles within you now, not as idea, but as presence, something deep and unshakable begins to take root. Not excitement, not urgency, but a calm that carries the weight of truth. The calm of one who no longer needs to prove existence. The calm of one who knows. There came a moment in my own journey when everything I had taught, everything I had spoken, everything I had observed began to condense into a single realization so simple that the mind resisted it. I had spoken of imagination. I had spoken of assumption. I had spoken of identity. But beneath them all, beyond all words and techniques, I discovered the true key that turns the lock of reality. It is not the image alone. It is not the spoken word. It is not even the desire itself. It is the feeling of possession. It is the feeling of already having. For imagination, without feeling, is a picture without breath. A thought without feeling is a seed without water. A desire without feeling is a door that is never opened. The world does not move at the command of words. It does not obey mental pictures alone. It answers the vibration of feeling with absolute precision. I observed men who visualized faithfully and yet remained unmoved by life. I observed women who affirmed daily and yet saw no change. And then I observed, quietly, those who seldom visualized, who rarely spoke affirmations, who never strained at creation at all, yet life seemed to bend around them effortlessly. The difference was never effort. The difference was never discipline. The difference was always feeling. Those who manifested without struggle already felt themselves to be what they desired. They did not wait for permission from the world to feel secure. They did not wait for evidence to feel chosen. They did not wait for results to feel abundant. And because they felt first, the world followed after. Feeling is the language of the deeper mind. The outer mind thinks in words and images. The inner mind speaks only in feeling, and the inner mind is the one that builds. You may speak 1,000 words of confidence, but if within you feel uncertainty, uncertainty will be built. You may imagine riches in exquisite detail, but if beneath the image you feel loss, loss will be expressed. You may desire love with intensity, but if within the heart you feel unworthy, unworthiness will govern your relationships. The world is not deceived by your surface thoughts. It is not impressed by your effort. It responds only to what you feel as true. Feeling is acceptance. Feeling is belief. Feeling is consent. And whatever you feel to be real becomes real. This is why I say that feeling is the secret. Not because it is mysterious, but because it is hidden in plain sight. The world spends its energy on thought, on intellect, on control, on strategy. Yet, all the while, quietly beneath thought, feeling is shaping destiny moment by moment. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are willing to feel as yours. This is the great misunderstanding that keeps so many circling their desires without ever touching them. They imagine from wanting instead of imagining from having. They visualize from longing instead of visualizing from possession. They focus on the picture of success while feeling the emotion of waiting, and waiting is what they receive. Waiting is a state. Possession is a state. The law answers state. You cannot fool it. When you imagine from longing, you reinforce the fact that you do not have. When you imagine from effort, you reinforce the fact that you are trying. When you imagine from desperation, you reinforce the fact that you are lacking. But when you imagine from fulfillment, you dissolve the distance between desire and fact. The feeling of possession collapses time. You no longer live in the future. You no longer chase tomorrow. You no longer postpone being. You become. And the world rearranges itself accordingly. This is why many diligently rehearse images yet remain unchanged. The image is not the cause. The feeling that accompanies the image is the cause. Two men may imagine the same house. One does so with excitement and certainty, the other does so with doubt and hunger. One feels ownership, the other feels absence. And the law delivers two entirely different experiences, though the images were identical. Feeling is the womb. I learned that what you feel to be natural is what manifests with the least resistance. What you feel to be foreign requires struggle until it no longer feels foreign. The moment wealth feels natural, wealth appears. The moment love feels natural, love appears. The moment peace feels natural, peace becomes your climate. The world is not changed by what shocks you. It is changed by what feels normal to you. And your feeling of normal is trainable. Night after night, I observed that sleep is the great doorway through which feeling enters the deeper mind without obstruction. When the outer senses grow quiet, when the body softens, when effort dissolves, feeling slips beneath the gates of reason and takes root in the soil of the subconscious. And what is planted there grows without being questioned. You may think all day with mixed signals. You may struggle with belief. But if, as you drift into rest, you feel yourself to be the one you desire to be, that feeling enters unchallenged. It is accepted as fact, and once accepted, it must express itself. This is why what you feel as you fall asleep is of such creative power. At that threshold, you are no longer arguing with yourself. You are no longer persuading, you are impressing. And the mind cannot refuse what feels real. The subconscious mind does not reason. It does not debate. It does not discriminate between what is actual and what is assumed through feeling. It simply accepts, and once accepted, it expresses. This is why it is not enough to say, I am wealthy while feeling poor. It is not enough to say, I am loved while feeling alone. The subconscious hears only the feeling. The words are merely decoration. Feeling is identity in motion. The moment you truly feel yourself to be secure, you no longer think about security. The moment you truly feel yourself to be loved, you no longer hunt for approval. The moment you truly feel yourself to be free, you no longer argue with limitation. You behave differently. You choose differently. you move differently, and life follows. This is why some people never try to manifest, yet seem to receive effortlessly. They are not performing techniques. They are living from feeling. They feel themselves to be entitled to goodness. So goodness appears. They feel themselves to be supported. So support arises. They feel themselves to be favored. And the world begins to favor them. Not because they demanded it, but because they expected it. Expectation is feeling projected forward, and expectation is magnetic. On the other hand, effort often repels. Effort declares that something is not yet. Effort affirms absence. Effort announces struggle as identity. And the world always confirms identity. You do not need to exert pressure on life. Life is already moving in obedience to your deepest emotional climate. What you feel in private, the world displays in public. Now, as you rest between waking and sleep, your feeling is exceptionally impressionable. The mind is no longer guarded, the inner court is open. The deeper layers of assumption are exposed. Here, you do not need to force images. You only need to surrender into feeling. The feeling you cultivate now becomes the law that governs tomorrow. If you allow yourself now to feel safe, safety becomes law. If you permit yourself now to feel chosen, chosenness becomes law. If you sink now into the feeling of being complete, completion becomes law. The outer world must obey the inner decree, and feeling is the decree. You may notice now that as the body softens, feeling grows more vivid, the heartbeat slows, the breath deepens. The sense of identity loosens from form and anchors itself in state. You become less concerned with what you see and more aware of what you are. This is the region where miracles are not produced, but assumed. In this region, the question is not, how will it happen? The question dissolves, because the feeling already implies completion. When you feel possession, you no longer plan receipt. You move as one who has received, and the law agrees. I once told a man who was desperate for release from debt to cease all anxious visualization, all affirmations born of panic, all striving. I asked him only to practice one thing, each night to fall asleep, feeling the quiet relief of being free, not thinking of freedom, feeling it. The softened breath, the unburdened chest, the ease of one whose obligations are behind him. He did not imagine numbers. He did not visualize gold. He felt relief, and relief rebuilt his world. For relief is the feeling of fulfilled desire. It was not many weeks later that his affairs rearranged with such naturalness that he almost doubted the transformation. It did not arrive as drama. It arrived as inevitability. Because feeling always precedes fact. The world is conservative. It does not innovate. It only repeats what you secretly feel to be true. Now observe how often human beings feel more vividly what they fear than what they desire. They imagine success faintly and failure passionately. They picture joy lightly and catastrophe intensely. And then they wonder why the negative seems so powerful. It is not the thought that is powerful. It is the feeling behind the thought. Fear is emotion charged with belief. Expectation is emotion charged with trust. Both are creative. But fear usually wins, because it is felt more deeply. This is why I urge you inward always, not to force thought, but to refine feeling. Do not argue with the mind. Do not wrestle with images. Enter the state first. Let the feeling saturate you. Then the images will follow effortlessly, as servants follow a king. Feeling is the seat of authority. When the feeling changes, thought rearranges itself. Behavior rearranges itself. Circumstance rearranges itself, all without effort. And now you begin to understand why so much striving fails, why so many struggle with techniques, why so many try to hold images rigidly and feel exhausted. They are pushing at the surface while neglecting the depth. You do not create with tension. You create with surrender to feeling. The deeper the surrender, the faster the imprint. This is why repetition is useful, not as mechanical chant, but as emotional soaking. You do not repeat to convince. You repeat to saturate. Feeling grows by familiarity. The state becomes comfortable. And once a feeling becomes normal, life must normalize it. This is why the law is not impressed by intensity that is brief. It is impressed by familiarity that is steady. A quiet, consistent feeling of "this is who I am now" reshapes worlds. Dramatic visualization once a week, and despair the rest of the days produces despair, not miracles. But soft, persistent possession produces inevitability. The seed does not shout at the soil, it rests within it. The womb does not strain to create, it receives. The world is formed through resting feeling. Now let yourself feel, not hope, not anticipation, but possession. Do not reach forward. Do not look outward. Sink inward into the state of already being. What would it feel like if your desire were no longer a desire, but a memory? What would it feel like if it were no longer ahead of you, but behind you, completed? What would it feel like if you no longer wanted it because you had become it? That feeling is the creative command. Remain with it. Do not decorate it with argument. Do not burden it with time. Do not weaken it with conditions. Let it be enough. The world will take care of the rest. For the law never asks for permission. It obeys what you feel to be true of yourself. And tonight, more than any other time, you are shaping that truth. There is a point at which all teaching becomes unnecessary. A point at which all methods dissolve. A point at which even desire itself must be laid upon the altar and released. That point is reached when a man no longer seeks to become, but simply is. This is what I mean when I say, live in the end. Not someday, not when circumstances permit, not after proof arrives, but now. To live in the end is not to visualize occasionally. It is not to hope quietly. It is not to wait patiently. It is not to beg inwardly. To live in the end is to accept identity before evidence. It is to occupy the state of the fulfilled wish so completely that the question of fulfillment no longer arises. The one who lives in the end does not ask, when will it come? He asks nothing at all. The one who lives in the end does not watch the world for signs. He watches only his own state. The one who lives in the end does not plead for change. He moves as change incarnate. For what is the end but the fulfilled state? And what is the fulfilled state but identity settled? To live in the end is to walk through the world, not as a seeker, but as one who has arrived, not with arrogance, not with performance, but with inner agreement. A man who lives in the end of wealth does not think of money constantly. He thinks from sufficiency. His decisions arise from overflow, not from fear. He does not tighten around life. He does not clutch. He does not brace for loss. He moves with an ease that belongs only to those who feel secure, and the world must confirm that feeling. A woman who lives in the end of love does not scan every face for approval. She does not analyze every word for hidden rejection. She does not negotiate her worth. She does not ask to be chosen. She expects to be met, and the world, encountering this quiet expectation, rearranges itself to meet her. For expectation is command. One who lives in the end of health does not wait for symptoms to disappear before feeling whole. He does not bargain with the body. He does not fear the sensation. He inhabits vitality as identity. He thinks from strength. He breathes from aliveness. And the body, obedient to the deeper command, reshapes itself accordingly. For the body follows the state. One who lives in the end of freedom does not count the chains. He does not argue with constraints. He does not rehearse obstacles. He moves as one who belongs to himself, and life yields room. One who lives in the end of peace does not wrestle with silence. He does not demand that the world quiet itself. He quiets inwardly, and the world obeys outwardly. This is always the order: inside first, outside second, never reversed. To live in the end is the most radical act a human being can commit. It is to refuse to be governed by appearances. It is to deny memory its authority. It is to hollow out the past of its power. It is to stand as though the verdict has already been rendered in your favor. And this stance is not dramatic. It is quiet. It looks from the outside like ordinary living. From the inside, it is sovereignty. For living in the end is not pretending. it is consenting. You do not act as if to fool the world. You act from I already am. And the difference is infinite. The actor performs. The inhabitant lives. The performer watches himself. The inhabitant forgets the performance. The one who pretends still doubts. The one who inhabits no longer asks. When I say live in the end, I do not mean fabricate gestures or alter speech as a strategy. I mean sink so completely into the state of fulfilled being that your reactions, your posture, your breath, your timing, your choices arise naturally from that state. You do not monitor yourself. You become, and becoming dissolves all effort. Effort belongs to the one who is trying to get somewhere. The one who is already there does not strain. This is why living in the end feels strangely like rest. It is exertion that falls away. It is vigilance that dissolves. It is the anxious measuring of progress that evaporates. The one who lives in the end is not inactive. He acts constantly, but his action is free from desperation. He does not run toward life. Life moves toward him. He does not search for opportunity. Opportunity recognizes him. He does not chase answers. Answers assemble around him. And all of this happens without spectacle. The miracle of living in the end is that it feels ordinary from within. There is no lightning, no thunder, no sudden announcement. Only a subtle shift from I hope to I am. Yet this shift moves worlds. Now, as you rest in this threshold state, the difference between wanting and being becomes exquisitely clear. Wanting feels like leaning forward. Being feels like standing upright. Wanting is always ahead of you. Being is always where you are. And the law responds only to where you stand, not to where you glance, not to where you wish to be. Where you stand. If you stand in lack, lack must echo. If you stand in abundance, abundance must follow. Not by reward, by resonance. The universe is not a judge. It is an instrument. It plays the note you strike as identity. This is why waiting is so destructive. Waiting is a state. It is an identity of not yet. And as long as you inhabit not yet must remain your experience. Many believe they are patient, when in truth they are loyal to delay. Many believe they are hopeful, when in truth they are faithful to distance. Many believe they are preparing, when in truth they are firming absence. Living in the end severs that loyalty. It is disloyal to appearances. It is loyal only to being. You do not need to know how the bridge will appear. The bridge is built by the state you occupy. The state selects the sequence. The state summons the means. The state arranges the crossing. Your task is not architecture. Your task is residence. Reside in the end. Live there in feeling. Move there in breath. Think from there without effort. Let the world struggle with catching up, for the world always lags behind the state. You live first, life reflects after. This delay is not punishment. It is the natural echo time of creation. Do not become restless in the echo. Remain loyal to the source. If you remain faithful to the end, the means will betray themselves by appearing. They always do. I have seen men live in the end of prosperity while surrounded by circumstance that screamed contradiction. They did not argue. They did not justify. They did not try to convert anyone. They simply remained, and one by one, the props of poverty fell away. I have seen women live in the end of union while memory told them they were unlovable. They did not negotiate with memory. They did not fix the past. They did not rehearse grief. They lived in the end. And the world, finding no resistance in them, rearranged itself into partnership. For the law never fights your assumption. It fulfills it. Living in the end is not denial of the present. It is recognition that the present is always malleable. You do not deny what you see. You simply refuse to bow to it as final. Finality belongs only to the state you inhabit. Circumstances are provisional. Identity is sovereign. This is why two men may stand in the same storm and experience different realities. One feels protected. The other feels cursed. And the storm confirms both. Not because the storm judges. because the storm echoes identity. Now begin to notice how utterly self-contained living in the end is. It does not require agreement, it does not require witnesses, it does not require approval. It is entirely internal. No one needs to know. No one needs to understand. No one needs to participate. You do this not for display, but for alignment. When a man tries to convince the world of who he has already confessed he is not yet that. The one who is does not announce. He moves, and movement speaks. Living in the end also ends the inner negotiation. There is no more almost me, no more soon me, no more after I achieve me. There is only presence, here. Now, this is who I am. And from that declaration, spoken not with lips but with being, the whole machinery of life adjusts. You do not master time. You dissolve it. You do not eliminate obstacles. You walk above them. You do not demand opportunity. You become the point of entry. Now, as your mind rests and the surface of thought grows quiet, let yourself feel the dignity of already being, not reaching, not proving, being. Let yourself feel what it is like to no longer need to arrive, because you have arrived. Let yourself feel what it is like to no longer seek permission, because permission was never required. Let yourself feel what it is like to no longer brace, because nothing stands against you now but old habit, and habit yields to identity. Identity always prevails. Living in the end is not a posture you hold with effort. It is a position you relax into. The deeper you relax into it, the more stable it becomes. The more stable it becomes, the more stable it becomes, the less the world can move you from it. This is the law of dominion through stillness. This is how kings are crowned without ceremony. This is how the invisible becomes inevitable. And now, as this truth continues to settle within you beneath speech, beneath thought, beneath memory, your entire sense of futurity softens. The future is no longer something you walk toward. It is something that walks toward you. There are people who believe that time imprisons them. They believe the past is a chain, that memory is a weight, that yesterday stands behind them like a judge who never sleeps. I once believed this myself, until I discovered that the past is not a solid thing. It is not fixed. It is not even alive. It has no life of its own. It lives only because it is being remembered in a particular way. The past does not follow you. You carry it. And what you carry is not the event. You carry the meaning. You carry the feeling. You carry the interpretation. I learned that everything which seems to be done is only done because it is being continuously imagined in the same form. The moment imagination withdraws from an old version of yesterday and clothes it with a new meaning, the entire structure of the present begins to change quietly, inevitably, without asking permission. This is why I say the past does not truly exist, not as fact, not as law, not as destiny. It exists only as assumed memory. And memory is imagination operating backward. The same creative power that shapes tomorrow also reshapes yesterday. Nothing is exempt. No wound is permanent. No failure is final. No regret is sealed. The seal remains only as long as the emotional agreement remains. When you change the inner story of a moment, you change its outer offspring, and every moment gives birth to the next. What you call trauma is not the event. It is the emotional charge you continue to supply to the event. The body remembers what the soul continues to rehearse. The nervous system rehearses what the imagination refuses to release. But the imagination is not bound. It can revise. To revise is not to pretend something did not happen. To revise is to remove the sting. It is to change the interpretation. It is to lift the wound out of the identity and dissolve its authority. When you revise, you do not deny experience. You redeem it. And redemption changes the present. Many people believe they are suffering from what happened to them. In truth, they are suffering from what they keep saying happened to them. And each time the inner story is repeated with the same feeling, the nervous system hears it as now. The body does not know yesterday. The body only knows the present emotion. So if the past is recalled with pain, the body experiences pain now. If the past is recalled with guilt, the body experiences shame now. If the past is recalled with fear, the body experiences danger now. The event may be finished. The state is not revision, changes the state. And when the state changes, the present reorganizes itself without needing to touch the outer memory. I discovered that when you revise a memory, you are not changing time. You are changing identity. And identity governs experience across all seeming time. A man who revises failure stops producing failure. A woman who revises rejection stops attracting rejection. A soul who revises guilt stops living in self-punishment. For the law always answers the present state, not the historical fact. History is powerless to compel. Only the present assumption is creative. This is why forgiveness transforms not only relationships, but destinies. Forgiveness is emotional revision. This is why release heals not only the heart, but circumstance. Release is identity revision. When you revise, you remove the past from the throne. You reclaim authorship. I learned that every night before sleep is a sacred courtroom. The senses grow quiet. The world loosens its grip. The outer drama fades, and imagination becomes pliable. At that hour, you may do what no physician, no priest, no circumstance can ever do for you. You may change the seed of your tomorrow by altering the feeling of your yesterday, not by force, by substitution. If during the day you experienced a conversation filled with humiliation, you do not argue with it, you do not analyze it, you do not justify it. You simply return to that scene inwardly at night and replace the feeling. You imagine the tone soften. You imagine yourself heard. You imagine dignity restored. You feel the relief of respect, and that feeling becomes the new memory. From that night forward, the world responds not to the actual conversation, but to the revised one. Because the subconscious does not know what really happened. It knows only what is felt as real now. This is why revision is the most merciful law that exists. It does not punish you for what you have experienced. It allows you to change the meaning and therefore the future expression. You are never condemned by the event. You are only bound by the interpretation, and interpretation is fully within the power of imagination. This is why two people may pass through the same tragedy and walk away with opposite lives. One carries it as a wound, the other carries it as awakening. The same event becomes two destinies. Destiny is not written in what happens. It is written in what it means to you. And meaning is revisable. Many carry guilt as though it were sacred. They punish themselves endlessly for words spoken long ago, for decisions made in confusion, for actions born of fear or ignorance. They believe suffering is the price they must continue paying. But guilt is not repentance. Guilt is loyalty to an old version of self. And that old version can be released. Revision is not denial of responsibility. It is transformation of identity. When a man revises his past guilt into understanding, compassion, or learning, he stops recreating that guilt in new forms. Life no longer needs to teach the lesson again through pain. For pain repeats only what has not been integrated. This is why unhealed memory seeks echo. It wants resolution. Revision supplies it. Trauma is not stored in time. It is stored in meaning. Change the meaning, and the trauma dissolves as naturally as fog under sunlight. You do not need to relive the pain. You only need to replace the feeling. The body will follow the new feeling as obediently as it followed the old. I have seen men who carried childhood terror for decades dissolve it in a single night, through compassionate revision, not by analyzing it endlessly, but by entering the memory with new authority and new feeling. They no longer saw themselves as victims. They felt themselves protected, and protection became their climate. I have seen women who believed they were forever abandoned. Release that belief by revising a single critical moment where the meaning had first been assigned. The moment they felt chosen, instead of forsaken within the memory, the world began to choose them without effort. For the world does not relate to your biography. It relates to your identity. And revision changes identity at the root. Nothing is more powerful than this. Not affirmation, not willpower, not action. Revision works because it changes the cause, and when the cause changes, the effect cannot continue. The world must reorganize. Now you are beginning to feel how gentle this power is. It does not attack the past, it does not battle memory, it simply redeems it. It replaces the emotional signature quietly, and the moment the signature changes, the echo fades. You are not erasing history, you are lifting its spell. The past has no voice of its own. It speaks only when you lend it feeling. The moment you stop lending pain, pain falls silent. Now, in this deep state between worlds, the nervous system rests open, the defenses are lowered, the old stories are less rigid. Here, revision sinks deeply, because the mind is not arguing for the old identity. Tonight, you do not revise to escape, you revise to free. You may return to moments of shame and bathe them in dignity. You may return to moments of fear and clothe them in protection. You may return to moments of loss and crown them with meaning. You may return to moments of abandonment and appoint yourself chosen, not once, but gently. Persistence in tenderness is what changes the root. You are not required to forgive out of obligation. You revise because you no longer wish to recreate yesterday in tomorrow's clothing. Every unrevised memory is a silent prayer for repetition. Revision cancels the prayer. The law does not demand that you suffer for what you no longer inhabit. And now, as you rest in this quiet power, you may begin to feel the strange relief of time softening. Not racing, not pressing, not accusing, softening. The weight of what was loosens. The grip of what should have been relaxes. And for the first time, perhaps, you experience that your life is not a story written behind you, but a story being authored now. The revision of yesterday is the liberation of tomorrow. What you forgive in memory releases from repetition. What you soften in imagination dissolves in experience. What you redeem within ceases to accuse without. This is not philosophy, this is law. And it works whether one believes it or not. The only requirement is usage. Tonight, as you drift perfectly between awareness and sleep, revision enters without defense. It does not argue with your intellect. It does not seek your permission. It simply plants a new emotional truth. And the future must obey it. For the past, once revised, becomes the new father of the present. There is a moment each day that most pass through without knowing its power. A moment so quiet, so subtle, so easily overlooked, yet so absolute in its authority over the next day, the next week, the next year, and even the next lifetime. It is the moment just before sleep, when the world loosens its grip, when the senses withdraw their claims, when the outer self begins to dissolve into the inner. This moment is not merely rest, it is creation in its purest form. I learned long ago that the state preceding sleep is not ordinary, it is not neutral, it is not empty. It is the most fertile condition the mind ever enters. In this state, the rational mind releases its guard. The critic grows silent. The calculating faculty relaxes its grip. And the subconscious, the great recorder, the faithful builder, the unquestioning servant, steps forward to receive its orders. This is why this hour is sacred, not by tradition, not by ritual, but by function. Here, you are neither fully bound to the world nor fully released into sleep. You stand in the doorway between the seen and the unseen, between the formed and the formless, between the echo and the voice. Here, what you assume becomes law. During the day, the mind argues. It compares, it doubts, it resists. It consults the past and measures the future. But as sleep approaches, these gates fall away. The mind grows childlike again, receptive, trusting, open. And what is planted here is not challenged. This is why what you carry into sleep, you carry into tomorrow, not in memory alone, but in form. If you fall asleep in fear, you awaken into its echoes. If you fall asleep in resentment, you awaken into its proof. If you fall asleep in longing, you awaken into distance. But if you fall asleep in possession, The day must rise to meet it. Sleep does not change you. It confirms you. The subconscious mind is not impressed by effort. It does not measure worth. It does not question plausibility. It receives only what is impressed upon it at this threshold moment, and it receives it as fact. This is why a single night, assumed correctly, has more creative power than months of strained effort. For here, belief is not manufactured, it is absorbed. I have watched people struggle with faith all day long, then change their entire life by what they felt for a few silent minutes before sleep. For in those minutes, the world is no longer consulted, identity is no longer debated. The soul speaks directly to the builder, and the builder never refuses. Now, as you rest within this very state, you are standing at the exact gate I speak of. Your body is heavy, yet your awareness is light. Your thoughts are slower, yet your feeling is stronger. You are no longer fully anchored to the day, and not yet dissolved into dream. You are between worlds. Here, imagination becomes destiny, not by effort, by impression. The conscious mind, the one that argues, no longer stands guard. The subconscious, the one that obeys, now reigns. And whatever is accepted here must be expressed in form. This is why I say the state before sleep is the creative womb of tomorrow. You do not need to labor here. You only need to consent. What you consent to in feeling becomes the law of your next experience. Now you understand why ancient wisdom always revered the twilight between waking and sleep. Not because it was mystical in appearance, but because it was mechanical in function. It is the one moment when the mind is wide open and undefended. A man may resist change for years in daylight and surrender to it in one quiet moment at night. A woman may argue with fear endlessly by day and dissolve it completely in the softness of sleep. Because resistance belongs to waking, acceptance belongs to falling asleep. Sleep is not collapse. It is transfer. The torch of authority passes from the conscious to the subconscious, from the reasoning to the creative, from the actor to the maker, and the maker records faithfully. The subconscious does not act selectively. It does not moralize. It does not improve what it receives. It simply reproduces it with absolute loyalty. As a man sows in this state, so shall he reap in the world. And you sow here, not by words, not by logic, not by planning, but by feeling. Feeling is the currency of the subconscious. What you feel as real here becomes real without your help. If you feel wronged here, you awaken to proof. If you feel favored here, you awaken to favor. If you feel unseen here, life mirrors invisibility. If you feel chosen here, the world begins to choose you, not because it intends to, because it must. The bridge between inner and outer is laid nightly, and most cross it unconsciously. You are now learning to cross it deliberately. The moment before sleep is not for effort, it is not for striving, it is not for repetition born of anxiety, it is not for pleading, it is for being. You do not say, I will be. You do not say, I wish. You do not say, one day. You are. And the builder accepts only what is. Tonight, you do not bring yesterday here. You do not carry grievances across the bridge. You do not transport fear into the womb of tomorrow. You lay them down at the threshold, and you cross only with identity. The identity you feel now becomes the signature impressed upon your destiny. Do not strain to imagine what you want. Sink into who you already are. What you are is what manifests, not what you seek. Now feel the softness growing in the edges of thought. Notice how logic grows drowsy. Notice how the impulse to analyze weakens. This is the signal that the gate is open. Here, even a whisper is a command. Here, the lightest feeling outweighs 1,000 arguments. This is why the wise grow quiet at night. They are not empty. They are precise. They choose gently. They assume carefully. They do not fight the day. They choose the morrow. Falling asleep is not drifting away. It is imprinting. And now, as you hover here, the smallest change in your sense of self sends ripples into unseen levels of being that reorganize the world far beyond your sight. Cities shift, Paths align. Meetings arrange. Doors prepare themselves to open. All because of what you accepted here. Sleep is not passive, it is creative surrender. You surrender the conscious will, and the deeper will creates. This is why even a single assumption taken into sleep repeatedly must harden into fact. It is not a battle of thought. It is a saturation of being. Night after night, the same feeling becomes law, and law becomes life. This is not metaphor. This is mechanism. The subconscious mind is the soil. The moment before sleep is the planting. The day is the harvest. You cannot plant wheat and expect thorns. You cannot plant fear and awaken to peace. You cannot plant weakness and arise in strength. The harvest always matches the seed, and the seed is always feeling. Now, as you rest in this holy neutrality between here and there, you are freer than at any other time of the day. Free from the noise of the world, free from the weight of roles, free from history's grip. This is where you meet yourself as creator without costume, without witness, without rehearsal. Only what you feel remains, and that is enough. You may now understand why the old teachers said that one who masters this gate masters life, for he no longer begs tomorrow. He commands it silently, not by domination, by assumption. You are standing now exactly where every miracle ever recorded was born, not in daylight, not in noise, but here, in this softness, in this surrender, in this quiet authority of being. And what you accept here will accept you in the world. Now there is nothing left to understand, nothing left to analyze, nothing left to solve. The only thing that remains is to rest. And rest is not the absence of creation. Rest is creation without resistance. So let the body begin to loosen in its own time. No need to hurry it. No need to guide it with effort. Just allow the weight of yourself to be supported by the surface beneath you. The shoulders need not carry the day anymore. The jaw no longer needs to guard the words that were never spoken. The hands may open without being asked. The breath finds its own rhythm when it is no longer observed. You do not force the body to relax. You simply stop commanding it to hold. And in this silence between commands, relaxation arrives by itself. Let the muscles of the face soften, as though warm water were flowing gently along the lines of the brow and the eyes. Let the space behind the eyes grow quiet. Let the tongue rest easily in the mouth with no message to deliver. The neck no longer needs to keep watch. The chest rises and falls without ambition now. The heart beats without explanation. The stomach releases its vigilance. The hips release their memory. The legs grow heavier, not as burden, but as permission. There is nothing you must do. There is nothing you must remember. There is nothing you must become in this moment. You are already here. And here is enough. Thoughts may still appear at the edges of awareness, but they no longer demand response. They pass as clouds pass a still sky. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to correct them. They drift because there is no longer a hand holding them in place. Now the boundary between the body and the feeling begins to blur gently. You are less a form and more a state, less a name and more a presence, less a story and more a quiet awareness that simply exists without describing itself. And in this quiet, images begin to arise on their own, not forced, not summoned, but invited. An image forms softly, as if it had always been waiting behind the eyes. You do not decide what it is, you simply notice its mood. And the mood is tender, the mood is settled, the mood is safe. Perhaps you sense the quiet closeness of another presence, not rushed, not anxious, just near in a way that needs no explanation. There is no striving here, no proving, only the warmth of shared silence. The understanding that nothing needs to be said, because nothing is missing. You are not trying to create love. You are noticing the feeling of being met, and the body recognizes this feeling as truth. The nervous system relaxes into it, as though it were familiar, as though it had always belonged here. Now another scene drifts in without demand. It is simple. There is no drama in it. There is only ease. Perhaps there is a quiet receipt in the hand, or the subtle relief that comes from knowing something has been resolved. The weight that once pressed in the chest is gone. There is no calculation anymore, no counting, no tightening around the future. There is only the calm sensation of enough time, enough provision, enough room to breathe. Not because you asked, because you feel it. And what you feel here has no opposition. Another image passes through gently, as if the river of imagination were carrying it without effort. A voice you once thought was lost now sounds ordinary again. A conversation that once felt impossible now unfolds with gentleness. There is no defense in it, no tension, no needing to be right. Only the quiet recognition of one being seen by another without armor. And in that seeing, something old releases without struggle. You are not trying to fix, you are allowing resolution to arrive as mood rather than event. Another feeling drifts through like a soft current beneath the surface of thought. It is the feeling of safety. Not loudly declared, not proven, simply known. The body rests into it as a child rests when it realizes it is being held. There is no scan for danger here, no watchfulness, just the nervous system recognizing that it may let go. The muscles soften even more as this recognition settles. The breath deepens on its own. The heart slows not from control, but from certainty. You are not imagining safety. You are remembering it. Now there is a stillness that is no longer empty. It is filled with quiet assurance, the kind of assurance that does not need excitement to validate it. It simply exists as atmosphere. In this atmosphere, scenes come and go without attachment. You do not cling to them. You do not label them as important. They float through awareness like signals from a deeper intelligence that knows how to shape without announcing itself. You might notice yourself walking easily through a familiar place with a new feeling in the body. The place has not changed, but you have. The walk is unhurried. The posture is open. The eyes no longer search. They simply observe, and observation feels safe now. You might sense the subtle satisfaction of having spoken a truth without fear, the relief that comes afterward. Not relief because you won, but relief because you were real. You might feel the quiet pleasure of returning to a space that once caused strain and noticing that the strain is no longer present. The walls did not change. The state did. And because the state changed, the experience dissolved. All of these impressions are gentle. None of them demand effort. None of them ask you to make anything happen. They only invite you to rest in the end without naming it. Your subconscious understands this language perfectly. It does not need instruction. It needs consent. Now the border between imagining and being grows thinner. You are no longer watching scenes. You are tasting states, not as pictures, but as atmospheres, as emotional climates that feel strangely familiar, as though you had lived them long before and merely forgot. There is no urgency here. Urgency belongs to lack. This place knows only sufficiency. The longer you remain without striving, the deeper the impression settles, not loudly, not suddenly, but with the certainty of something sinking into still water. There is no command issued to the future. There is only a permission given to the present, and permission is the most powerful creative act. You are permitting yourself to feel complete without cause. You are permitting yourself to feel secure without proof. You are permitting yourself to feel chosen without validation. And because you allow this here, where the gate is open and the guards are asleep, the feeling passes unchallenged into the deeper mind where all construction begins. Now the body grows heavier, not from fatigue, from surrender. The limbs feel distant, as though they belong to the bed more than to you. The breath is slow and deep without direction. Thought is now more like echo than voice. You are not sinking into sleep. Sleep is rising to meet you. And as it does, the final feeling you rest in is what will be taken as decree. Not because you demanded it, but because you accepted it. You do not need to hold the images. They dissolve naturally as the feeling remains. The feeling outlives the picture. The picture fades. The state stays. And it stays because nothing is now contradicting it. You are not guarding the door. You are passing through it. Soon even these words will no longer be distinct. They will become part of the same soft field as the breath and the body and the feeling. There will be no separation between hearing and being. And in that union, the subconscious will receive its final instruction for the night, not as a sentence, but as a mood, not as a goal, but as a knowing. And that knowing will be simple, quiet, sufficient, whole. Now there is nothing more to reach for, nothing more to adjust, nothing more to complete. It is done. Not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because you accepted it. And acceptance is the final act of creation. You no longer need to observe for signs. You no longer need to measure change. You no longer need to verify progress. What has been assumed has already been received. What has been received no longer asks for proof. It rests, and so may you. There is a quiet authority in rest, a certainty that does not argue, a stillness that does not persuade. It simply is. And in this being, the world rearranges itself without announcement. You will not hear the machinery of fate turning. You will not see the gears of circumstance moving. Yet they move. They always move when the state is accepted without resistance. You do not need to check tomorrow. You do not need to watch for outcomes. Outcomes follow states as shadows follow form, and the state is already set. It has been received without noise. It has been impressed without strain. It has been sealed without ceremony. You may feel the mind drifting now, not as escape, but as return. Returning from effort, returning from vigilance, returning from the long habit of control. The body no longer stands guard at the gates of thought. The gates are open, and nothing threatens what has already been accepted. The breath carries no question. The heartbeat carries no demand. Thought itself grows tender and slow, as if it too has grown tired of striving. It is no longer required. You do not need to remember what was said. You do not need to repeat anything in the morning. You do not need to perform. The seed does not wake up to check if it is growing. The sun does not rise to confirm it is shining. The river does not pause to verify it is moving. So too, your assumption does not need supervision. It moves now by its own law. It unfolds because it has been planted in the only soil that always responds, the feeling of being. You may notice a subtle relief spreading through your chest now. Not excitement, not anticipation. Relief, the relief that comes when responsibility ends. The relief that comes when the burden of making things happen is finally lifted from the shoulders of the mind. You are no longer carrying the future. The future is carrying you, and it carries you gently. There is nothing fragile here. And now you may notice that the body no longer needs instruction. It already remembers how to rest. The breath has found its rhythm without effort. The muscles no longer resist gravity. The weight of the day has dissolved into the surface beneath you. There is nothing left to prepare. You have already entered the current. From this point forward, nothing will be explained. Nothing will be taught. There will only be states softly suggested, like whispers carried on a quiet wind. Not commands, not demands, only gentle invitations for the soul to recognize itself in new garments. You do not need to choose which vision is for you. The one meant for you will find you. Images may come and go. Some may feel distant. Some may feel familiar. Some may feel like memories that never happened. Let them pass without effort. You are not here to create now, you are here to receive. The mind no longer leads. The feeling leads, and feeling does not argue. Feeling simply accepts. From this depth, reality reorganizes itself without asking your permission. You may listen, or you may drift, or you may forget the sound of my voice entirely. All are equally perfect, because what matters now is no longer heard with the ears. It is absorbed, and so without announcing the threshold, without marking the doorway, we pass gently from preparation into experience. Nothing begins, nothing ends. One state simply yields to another, and you move with it, as effortlessly as sleep moves into dream. Now you no longer need to imagine with effort. You no longer need to construct anything in the mind. You are not here to build a picture. You are here to sink into a state. A state does not require effort. A state is entered by yielding, and you are yielding now. The body has become distant, not absent, only distant. As one becomes distant from a shore while floating gently on water, still connected, but no longer burdened. The breath moves as it wishes. The heart speaks in slow, steady rhythms. Thought no longer runs forward. It drifts in wide circles, like birds settling into evening air. And in this slowing, something ancient awakens. Not a thought, not a desire, but a knowing. A quiet recognition that the thing once wanted is no longer wanted. It is had. Not later, not someday. Now, you do not need to ask what it is. The feeling knows, and the feeling never lies. It is the warmth that spreads through the chest when something is complete. It is the soft relief behind the eyes when waiting has ended. It is the gentle loosening of the hands when what they sought no longer needs to be grasped. You are not reaching now, you are resting in possession. And possession is not loud. It does not announce itself. It settles, like a familiar chair after a long journey, like a room you know by heart, like a name you no longer need to say to remember. You may notice now that the mind does not ask how. It does not ask when. Because those questions only live in lack, and you are no longer lacking, you are simply being, and being is enough. Let the body continue to soften, not because you try to soften it, but because it remembers how. The shoulders no longer carry the invisible weights of expectation. The jaw no longer holds the tension of becoming. The forehead no longer guards the future. Everything that once leaned forward returns to center. And in the center, there is fullness. It is not excitement. Excitement belongs to anticipation. This is quieter. This is steadier. This is the feeling of ownership without display, of arrival without ceremony, of fulfillment without noise. Now, without forming an image, without crafting a scene, allow the feeling itself to thicken, like warm air thickens in a summer evening. Not intense, dense, present. Let that feeling move through you as a substance, as if it were a gentle gravity that holds everything in place without force. You do not need to name what has been fulfilled. If the mind tries to name it, allow the name to pass. Names belong to form. This belongs to essence. This is the essence of it is done, and it is done. Does not speak. It simply settles. You may feel now that nothing is unresolved in this state. No tension points, no loose threads. Even questions feel unnecessary, because answers belong to those who are still seeking. You are not. You are being. And being requires no proof. Breath continues. Sleep approaches. But the feeling does not fade. It deepens, like a lake, darkening at dusk, not by losing light, but by gathering stillness. You are no longer trying to impress the mind. The mind is being impressed, quietly, effortlessly, without resistance. You may notice that memory loosens its grip now, not erased, softened. The past no longer presses forward. The future no longer pulls backward. All directions collapse into this single sufficient now, and this now is complete. This now is fulfilled. This now is whole. The wish you once carried like a question rests now like a possession. It no longer asks. It no longer aches. It simply is. You may notice a faint smile forming somewhere within you. Not on the lips, deeper. A smile that forms when the soul no longer needs to negotiate with time. When it no longer bargains with circumstance. When it recognizes its own authority without having to prove it. And this smile does not widen. It settles, like a secret that does not need telling. You may drift now further from the edges of thought, not asleep yet, not awake anymore, between, where the old effort cannot follow you, where identity loosens its grip, where roles dissolve, where names dim, and still the feeling remains, the feeling of having, the feeling of done, the feeling of quiet ownership. The world will not need to confirm this. Confirmation belongs to doubt. This belongs to knowing. And knowing does not require witnesses. The body rests now not as an object, but as a surface upon which the state settles, as snow settles on a field, not to change it, but to complete it. The state has weight, not heavy, real. And realities that are real do not announce themselves. They stay. You do not have to hold this, it holds you. You do not have to protect this, it defends itself by its own nature. You do not have to maintain this, it sustains itself because it is now your dwelling. You have moved into the end, and the end does not move. You have entered the final room, and the final room does not rearrange itself for visitors. It receives you, and you belong there naturally, as if you had always been there. As if the entire journey had been simply a remembering of a room that never stopped waiting for you. Now the breath grows deeper, slower, slower. The body becomes heavier, not tired, rooted, like something that no longer needs to travel, like something that has reached its place. You will not need to carry this state into tomorrow. Tomorrow will carry it for you, because once assumed, a state does not leave. It expresses itself as days, as encounters, as decisions, as movements, as quiet rearrangements you will not trace back to this moment. You will simply call them life. But life will be answering. It always answers the state. You may feel now the final loosening, the gentle surrender that comes just before sleep claims the senses. There is no loss in this surrender. Nothing is left behind. You are not fading away from fulfillment. You are sinking deeper into it. Sleep is not absence. Sleep is absorption. The deeper you sleep, the deeper the feeling settles. And the deeper it settles, the more faithfully it moves in the world unseen. You do not need to witness it. Witnessing belongs to effort. This belongs to rest. You may pass now into sleep as one who has already received, not as one who waits, not as one who hopes, but as one who rests in possession. And possession is quiet, still, certain, safe. Tonight is not like other nights. Not because something dramatic happens on the surface, but because something irreversible settles beneath it. There are nights when the body sleeps, and there are nights when identity changes quietly beneath sleep. This is such a night. You are not preparing to become. You are not imagining who you might be. You are not reaching toward a distant version of yourself. You are stepping into the one who already has. And this stepping does not require movement. It happens through consent, through soft recognition, through the gentle release of the self you no longer need to carry. The body is growing heavier, now not with fatigue, but with arrival, as though it has reached the final station of effort, as though nothing else must be done to justify its rest. The breath deepens, not to search for air, but because there is no pressure left to breathe for. Even that becomes permission instead of necessity, and as the breath settles, something else settles too. The old striving grows faint, the old comparisons grow irrelevant. The old anxiety about becoming dissolves into a quiet acceptance of being. You are not waiting anymore. Waiting belonged to the version of you who lacked. You are not hoping anymore. Hope belonged to the version of you who did not yet feel secure. You are not preparing anymore. Preparation belonged to the version of you who believed something was missing. But something is not missing now. You are not becoming whole. You are remembering that you always were. You may notice now that the inner voice grows different. It no longer speaks in questions. It no longer whispers doubts. It no longer negotiates with tomorrow. Its tone has shifted from seeking to knowing, from asking to resting, from imagining to inhabiting. You are not envisioning the version of you who has everything. You are noticing that you are already breathing as that one. The breath of the fulfilled is different. It is slower, wider, unhurried. There is no sharp inhale of anticipation, no tight exhale of fear. There is only motion without urgency, movement without destination, because destination has already been claimed. Now let the mind loosen its grip on the image of lack, not by fighting it, not by correcting it, but by turning its attention away from it gently, as one turns from a dim room into a room where the light is already on. You do not extinguish the darkness. You simply stop reaching into it, and now light is everywhere. Not bright, not blinding, steady, sufficient. You are no longer measuring yourself against the world. Measurement belongs to separation. You are no longer estimating how far you've come. Distance belongs to journeys, and the journey has ended. You are no longer checking whether you qualify. Qualification belongs to borrowed identities. This identity does not ask for permission. It simply settles into its chair and belongs. Tonight, your inner posture changes. Not the posture of the body, but the posture of being. The shoulders of the soul drop. The spine of the spirit straightens, not in tension, in authority. An authority that does not dominate. An authority that does not argue. An authority that does not argue. An authority that does not need applause. It is the quiet authority of one who no longer seeks confirmation. Now you may sense something subtle, a shift so gentle it feels like memory rather than change, as though you have returned to a place you left long ago, not by force, but by forgetting that you had ever left. You are not becoming the one who has everything. You are noticing that the one who has everything was waiting beneath all disguise, waiting beneath effort, waiting beneath anxiety, waiting beneath the story of lack, waiting beneath time itself. And now that story grows thin, its pages no longer feel heavy. You may still remember it, but you no longer live inside it. You are living in another story now. A story that does not move forward, it simply is. You may notice now that the idea of more has softened. More belongs to hunger, and hunger belongs to lack. You are not hungry in this state, you are nourished, not by things, but by sufficiency. You begin to sense the rhythm of the fulfilled, the way they move without rushing, the way they speak without trying, the way they listen without mistrust, the way they decide without fear of loss. You are not rehearsing these qualities. They are expressing through you naturally, because you are not pretending to be this one. You are allowing yourself to stop pretending to be anything else, and that is the greatest shift of all. There is a quiet dignity in this identity. It does not need to be seen to exist. It does not need to be proven to function. It does not need to be announced to be real. It simply directs reality without making a sound. You may sense tonight that the world will treat you differently, not because you demand it, but because your state no longer requests approval. People always answer state before they answer words. Circumstances always answer assumption before they answer effort. You are now assuming without effort, being without defense. See, existing without question. The version of you who has everything does not think about everything. Such thinking belongs to those who do not have. This version lives in an atmosphere of enough, and enough is expansive. Enough is calm. Enough is sovereign. Nothing presses against the heart now. Nothing leans upon the chest. Nothing crowds the breath. You may feel the boundaries of the body soften now, not dissolving, but becoming less important. You are not confined to this shape. You are expressing through it, and expression does not struggle with its instrument. It flows. Now there is no need to review your life, no need to correct your past, no need to predict your future. Those were tasks of the version of you who did not yet know who they were. You know now, not by thought, by state. And state does not argue with memory, it replaces it. You may feel the mind attempting to label this feeling. Let it fail. This feeling predates language. It is older than explanation. It is what remains when explanation falls away. You do not feel excited. Excitement is unstable. You feel established, grounded, installed, like something that has been placed where it cannot be displaced. The world will rearrange itself around this without consulting your logic. Doors will move quietly. People will appear as if summoned by chance. Opportunities will seem accidental. But nothing will be accidental. It will be the echo of this silent shift. You do not need to remember tonight. Remembering belongs to effort. Forgetting belongs to trust. And trust is what allows identity to reroute without disturbance. Sleep may now draw nearer. Not as a loss of awareness, but as a deepening of being. You are not falling asleep as the old version. That one has already faded from relevance. You are falling asleep as the one who no longer anticipates a better self, because that self is already present, already seated in your breathing, already written into your posture, already resting inside your silence. You may notice that the thought one day dissolves now. There is no one day in this state, there is only is, and is does not postpone. The body may feel heavier, the breath may feel slower, the surface of thought may feel further away. That is not fading, that is integration. The deeper the rest, the deeper the identity settles. And once settled, it begins to operate without your supervision. This is how all true change occurs, not in observation, but in rest, not in analysis, but in assumption. You have not forced this, you have not commanded it, you have not performed it, you have allowed it. And allowance is the final authority. What has been allowed becomes law. Now there is no need to patrol the mind, no need to safeguard belief, no need to repeat affirmation, no need to sustain intention. All of that belong to transition. You are no longer transitioning, you are inhabiting. Inhabiting does not ask for maintenance. It lives. The night carries you now as one who already stands on the other side of becoming. Sleep comes not as escape, but as confirmation, not as forgetting, but as sealing. And what is sealed in this depth does not reopen with doubt. Tomorrow will not bring proof. Proof is unnecessary. Tomorrow will bring correspondence. And correspondence is quiet, subtle, ordinary in appearance, but exact in nature. You will not notice immediately. Those who change in state never announce it. They notice the world responding first, and only later realize that the response began here, in this stillness, in this consent, in this silent assumption of being complete. You may drift now as one who is no longer preparing to become. You are already the one who has everything, and the one who has everything does not stay awake guarding the door. They rest inside ownership. They sleep inside sufficiency. They drift inside certainty. Sleep now, not as someone waiting for life to begin, but as someone allowing life to answer. There is a point the mind eventually reaches where it no longer seeks instruction, not because it has learned everything, but because it has grown tired of searching. And in that weariness, something far truer awakens. Not an idea, not a method, a recognition. A recognition that the end was never ahead. It was always beneath. You are approaching that place now, not by movement, not by effort, not by understanding, but by release. The body has already loosened its hold upon the world. The breath is slower now, not by control, but by relief. The muscles are no longer prepared for action, they are prepared for arrival. Even the weight of the body feels different, not as burden, but as grounding, as though gravity itself has become an ally rather than a demand. You are not entering something new, you are laying down something old. The old need to make, the old need to prove, the old need to strive. These are not removed, they are outgrown. And what remains is the state where everything is already done. This state does not feel dramatic, it feels settled. It does not sparkle, it stabilizes. It does not rush forward. It no longer moves at all. You may notice now that thought itself is slowing, not because it is suppressed, but because it no longer finds resistance to argue with. Streams do not rush when the land is level. They rush only when terrain resists them. And now there is no resistance, so thought becomes wide, spacious, unhurried. And within this widening, you begin to sense something unfamiliar and yet utterly natural: completion. Not the completion of a task, but the completion of becoming. The mind has spent so long imagining arrival as something dramatic, a moment, a breakthrough, a visible transformation. But arrival is none of these. Arrival is subtle. Arrival is quiet. Arrival is the absence of the urge to arrive. You are not waiting now. Waiting only exists where something is missing. Nothing is missing here. You are not scanning the horizon. Distance has dissolved. You are not preparing for a future revelation. The revelation has already taken place, and it did not announce itself. It simply replaced the strain with stillness. You may feel now that even desire has softened, not disappeared, but completed. Desire is no longer a pull forward. It has become a knowing beneath. The knowing that what was once desired is no longer absent. It is not expected. It is assumed, and assumption does not breathe quickly. It rests. When a thing is finished, it no longer asks for attention. When a journey is over, the feet no longer anticipate the road. When a room is reached, the hand no longer searches for the door. So now your inner life no longer scans for outcomes. It no longer replays hope. It no longer rehearses possibility. It inhabits certainty. And certainty does not sparkle. It stabilizes. It has no curiosity. It has no anxiety. It has no urgency. You may sense now that your identity itself is growing quieter. The name you answer to grows less important. The story you tell about who you are grows thin, not erased, simply softened. Outlines dissolve first, edges blur next, and what remains is not a person moving through time, but a state of being resting in itself. This is the state where everything is already done. It does not need the world to confirm it. It does not need results to justify it. It does not need proof to breathe. Proof belongs to doubt. This belongs to knowing. Breath moves deeper now. Not longer, deeper. As though the lungs themselves have discovered stillness beneath motion. And beneath the breath, there is a deeper rhythm yet. A gentle certainty that no longer waits for permission. You are not manifesting here. Manifestation belongs to those who still stand outside. You are dwelling inside the thing already finished. And when one dwells inside the finished state, the world has no instruction left but to follow. Not immediately, not dramatically, but faithfully. You may feel now a strange neutrality toward outcomes, not apathy, fulfillment. Fulfillment does not stare at the door for delivery. Fulfillment sits inside what is already alive. You are not indifferent. You are complete. Indifference is empty. Completion is full, and fullness does not ask. You may notice that questions begin to fall away, not answered. Unnecessary. What if dissolves? What when collapses? What how loses its grip? Because all of them belong to time, and you are no longer negotiating with time. You are residing beyond sequence, not above it, beyond its authority. The future has no power here. The past has no voice here. Only being remains, and being does not move. It is. The body may feel as though it is sinking now, not falling, settling, as if every cell recognizes that its work is done. Even the heartbeat feels different here, not because it slows, because it no longer carries urgency. Life is still moving, but it no longer rushes. You may sense the quiet dignity of this state now, the dignity of not needing to become, the dignity of not explaining, the dignity of not asking, the dignity of resting inside what has already been accepted as true. The state where everything is already done, has no anxiety about omission. Nothing was forgotten. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing is pending. The ledger is closed. The account is settled. And because it is settled within, it must settle without. But that is not your concern. Concern belongs to expectation. Expectation belongs to delay. Delay is no longer present here. You do not need to supervise this state. It sustains itself naturally. Once entered, it remains. You may visit it consciously, or it may carry you unconsciously, but it does not leave. It becomes the ground beneath experience, the platform from which the world reacts. And the world will react, not to your words, not to your efforts, not to your wishes, but to this quiet completion, to this unspoken finality, to this deep acceptance that nothing is missing. You may notice that the idea of improving yourself now feels distant, not wrong, irrelevant. Improvement belongs to deficiency. You are no longer positioned as deficient here. You are positioned as established, installed, rooted. This is not arrogance. Arrogance compensates. This is assurance. Assurance does not compensate, it rests. You are not claiming greatness, you are dissolving the need to claim anything at all. Greatness does not need to declare itself, it expresses. Now the mind grows even quieter. Thoughts may come and pass without engaging, without hooking emotion. They pass like wind through an open room. The room itself remains unchanged. This is how mind behaves when it is no longer tasked with becoming. It becomes atmospheric, not directive. The deeper you sink into this state, the more foreign striving begins to feel, as though it belonged to another lifetime, another identity, another character you once played. Not mistaken, just completed. You may sense gratitude here. Not gratitude for change, gratitude for release, gratitude for the end of narrative tension, gratitude for the closing of loops, gratitude for the soft landing in sufficiency. And this gratitude does not rise upward, it settles inward. There is no anticipation in this gratitude, only peace. Now even peace grows heavier. Not bright, dense, present. You are not attempting to hold this state. Holding implies fear of losing. You have no such fear here. This state does not leave. One does not fall out of completion. One may forget. But forgetting does not dissolve. It only delays recognition. And recognition has already occurred. Not as a thought, as a condition. Sleep may now be approaching the edges of awareness. Not pulling you away, drawing you deeper in. The senses no longer act as sentinels of control. They soften their watch. Vision dims. Hearing stretches. Even the weight of sound feels further away. And yet this state does not fade with the senses. It does not depend on perception. It depends on acceptance. And acceptance has already been given. You enter the state where everything is already done, not by stepping into it, but by stepping out of effort. You did not cross a threshold. You stopped resisting one. And that is always how it happens. The door was not locked. You stopped pushing. The room was not hidden. You stopped searching. You did not create this state. You remembered it. And remembering is always quiet. You may drift now as one who no longer waits for conclusion. You are living in conclusion. You may sleep now not as one who hopes for resolution, but as one who inhabits it. The world will continue to move. People will continue to speak. Days will continue to unfold. But something will be different now. Not because you forced it, because you finished something. And what is finished does not require vigilance. It requires rest. You may rest. It is already done. You are not falling asleep as the one you used to be. Not tonight. Tonight you drift as one whose life has already shifted, quietly, decisively, without announcement. You do not move into tomorrow as a continuation of the old story. The old chapter has already closed beneath your awareness. No sound was made when it closed. No signal was given. It simply ended because it was no longer required. The body knows this before the mind does. The breath knows it before thought can name it. There is a softness in the chest now that did not exist before. A kind of calm that is not relief from effort, but the absence of needing effort at all. The shoulders are not merely relaxed. They are no longer waiting. The jaw is not merely loose. It is no longer guarding identity. The eyes are not merely closed. They are no longer scanning the world for confirmation. You are not waiting for change. You are sleeping inside it. Life no longer feels like something approaching from afar. It no longer feels like a negotiation. It no longer feels like a struggle moving slowly in one direction. It feels rearranged, already, quietly restructured from the inside outward, as though the stage was dismantled behind the curtain while no one was looking. You do not feel transformed. You feel normal for the first time. There is no rush in this state. Rush belongs to anticipation. You do not anticipate your life changing. You assume it has, and assumption does not carry tension. It carries weight, real weight, the weight of settled fact, the weight of something that no longer needs to prove its validity. You may notice how little attention your old worries now demand. They do not pull, they do not insist, they drift like unanchored thoughts without power. You can remember them, but you no longer inhabit them. They feel like stories of another person, someone you once knew well, but no longer answer to. Your life does not feel improved, it feels replaced, not violently, not suddenly, but entirely. Replaced at the level of being, and being does not need to announce its changes. The breath grows deeper now, not because you are relaxing, but because the future no longer presses forward upon it. The heart beats without urgency. Even the subtle tension of being on the way dissolves. There is no on the way left. The way has already happened. You are not moving toward a different life. You are resting inside it. The mind no longer asks what will happen next. It no longer measures progress. It no longer scans for evidence. Evidence belongs to those who have not yet decided. You have already decided, but not with thought, with state, and state is sovereign. You may notice a strange gentleness toward yourself now. Not indulgence, not forgiveness. Recognition. The recognition that you are no longer required to carry the old identity forward into tomorrow. It has been set down, not examined, not judged, simply left where it no longer belongs. This is how real change always occurs, not by replacing behaviors, but by abandoning the state that required them. The old life is not destroyed. It is irrelevant. You may sense now that the future has lost its tension. It no longer feels charged with anxiety or expectation. It feels neutral, open, as though it is waiting for instruction rather than imposing demand. And the instruction has already been given, not through force, but through assumption. Your life has already changed, so the future now reorganizes quietly around that fact. You will not feel the rearrangement taking place. You will notice the aftermath. You will notice different conversations, different timings, different responses, different paths opening where none were demanded. But tonight, the shift occurs where it always occurs first, beyond observation, beneath effort, inside the assumption that what was once desired is no longer pending. It is remembered as present. You may feel the weight of the body growing heavier now, not heavy with fatigue, but heavy with grounding, as though the body itself has accepted a different position in space, as though it no longer leans into becoming, but rests into being. And being feels sufficient. You do not feel finished, you feel established. Established in a state where change no longer feels necessary because the foundation itself has changed. The structure of expectation has collapsed. The architecture of delay has fallen inward. And in its place, only this remains: quiet life, unforced life, life no longer negotiating its own permission. You may notice now that your emotions have softened into neutrality, not dullness, stability. The emotional spikes of longing and fear have flattened into quiet readiness. You are no longer waiting to be allowed. You are no longer auditioning for destiny. You are already inside the role, and roles do not audition. They express. There is nothing theatrical in this expression. It is ordinary, and that is how you will recognize it later, by how ordinary it feels. The most profound changes always feel ordinary, once entered. Drama belongs to transition. This is habitation. You are inhabiting the state where life is already changed, and habitation is silent. You may now sense the old timelines loosening their grip. The idea that things should have happened by now no longer stings. It no longer demands explanation. Time has lost its authority in this state. Time no longer sits above you like a judge. It simply passes through you as motion without command. You are not early. You are not late. Those only exist in states of becoming. You are established. This state does not rush to greet the morning. It allows the morning to find it already settled. The body continues to soften. The senses continue to dim. But the feeling remains dense, present, unmovable. You are not thinking, "My life has changed." Thinking is thin. You are feeling it as fact, and fact settles deeper than thought. If the mind tries to recall the old version of you, allow it to arise without resistance. You do not need to deny it. It no longer threatens the present state. It has no weight here. It belongs to an address you no longer inhabit. You did not move far to leave it. You changed floors. And on this floor, the floorboards do not creak with doubt. They do not echo with uncertainty. They do not bend beneath fear. They hold, you hold, life holds. The breath deepens again. The edges of thought blur further. You are not losing consciousness, you are losing the need to supervise it. Sleep approaches not as interruption, but as continuation. This state does not end when awareness fades. It embeds itself deeper. The deeper you sleep, the deeper it accepts itself as normal. And what becomes normal becomes permanent. Not by force, by familiarity. You may notice now that even desire has altered its tone. Desire no longer pulls outward, it expands inward. It no longer seeks fulfillment. It expresses from fulfillment. You do not want to change your life anymore. You live as though it already has. And from this assumption, the world will have no choice but to follow. You will not push it. You will not request it. You will not demand proof, because proof arrives naturally when assumption no longer argues. You will simply notice one day that the way you react to life has already changed. And reaction is always the first visible evidence of a changed state. But tonight, you do not need to see anything. Tonight is not for seeing. Tonight is for sealing. You may sense now that the past has lost its emotional charge. Not erased but neutralized. It no longer instructs the future. It no longer defines boundaries. It no longer sets limits. It becomes raw material for memory only, not for identity. Identity has shifted underground, and underground shifts change forests without disturbing the sky. You will wake tomorrow not thinking, my life is different. You will wake thinking as someone for whom difference is no longer noteworthy, because it has already been integrated. Sleep deepens now. Thought dissolves into slower waves. Even my voice may feel further away. That is not separation. That is merger. You are not following these words now. You are being carried by the state underneath them. Your life has already changed. It is not changing. It has already moved. This movement did not occur in time. It occurred in identity. And identity reconfigures reality without noise. No celebration is required. No confirmation is needed. No signal must be given. The old version does not need a farewell. The new version does not need a welcome. It is already inhabited. Breath slows again. Heaviness deepens. Stillness thickens. You are now sleeping inside the assumption of change. And assumption, when slept in, becomes fate. You may let go now. There is nothing left to hold. Nothing left to prepare. Nothing left to correct. Your life has already changed, and you are safe to rest inside that knowledge. There is a moment that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with sound. It does not ring a bell in the mind. It does not ask for witnesses. Yet, it is the moment upon which everything turns. It is not found through searching. It is not summoned through effort. It is encountered only when the search itself dissolves, and you are nearing it now. The body grows quiet, not because you command it to be still, but because it senses that stillness is no longer dangerous. The breath moves without direction. The muscles no longer prepare for resistance. Even the subtle tension of becoming begins to loosen its final threads. You are not approaching destiny. You are allowing it to rewrite itself beneath you. The mind believes destiny is a line that moves forward. But destiny is not movement. Destiny is alignment, and alignment does not move. It settles. You may feel as though something beneath thought is shifting now. Not changing, rearranging, like furniture moved in a room while the lights remain dim. Nothing seems different at first glance, and yet nothing sits where it once did. The silent moment is never dramatic. It is never loud. It never insists. It simply replaces. You do not feel chosen. You feel placed. You do not feel transformed. You feel returned. Returned to a center that was never lost, only covered. The breath grows deeper now, not longer, deeper, as though each breath descends into a deeper layer of being. And with each descent, the old arrangement loosens. You are not releasing the past, The past is losing relevance. You are not abandoning the old destiny. The old destiny is dissolving because it no longer reflects your state. Destiny is not imposed. It is echoed. The world echoes what you are being. And what you are being right now is quiet authority. Not authority over others. Authority over assumption. Authority over identity. Authority over what is allowed to become real. The silent moment is not felt as excitement. Excitement belongs to anticipation. This moment is felt as inevitability, not as pressure, as certainty without tension. You may notice now that the mind is no longer narrating. It is no longer commenting on experience. It is no longer trying to organize meaning. Meaning dissolves in the silent moment. Only being remains. Only presence remains. Only acceptance remains. And acceptance does not lean forward. It receives. You are not asking destiny to change. You are standing where change has already been accepted. You do not decide your future here. You consent to it. And consent is far more powerful than decision. Decision argues. Consent opens. In this opening, destiny rewrites itself quietly, not as an event, as a condition. You may feel now that the boundaries of time have softened. There is no urgency pulling you forward. There is no memory pulling you backward. There is only now, and now is sufficient. Destiny never rewrites itself in tomorrow. It rewrites itself in states assumed now. And the state you are resting in now does not anticipate change. It assumes it complete. This is the silent revision of fate, not by altering events, by altering the state that would have created them. You are not correcting life, you are removing the cause that required correction. The weight of the body grows heavier now, not with fatigue, with grounding, as if gravity itself is anchoring you into a new configuration of being. The old patterns do not resist. Resistance requires energy, and energy is not being spent here. Even fear feels distant now, not conquered, outgrown. Fear belongs to the one who waits for destiny. You are no longer waiting. You are living inside what destiny answers to. You may sense now that your name feels lighter, not erased, less binding. Your history feels thinner, not forgotten, less defining. The story of who you were no longer presses upon the story of who you are. The pen has been set down in one hand and lifted in another, without ceremony, without delay, without argument. Destiny does not announce when it accepts a new author. It simply begins responding to a different voice. And the voice it responds to now is not spoken. It is felt. You do not speak destiny into being. You become the one it answers. The deeper you sink into stillness, the deeper the rewrite settles, not on the surface of events. In the root of expectation. Expectations shape pathways. Pathways shape encounters. Encounters shape life. You are not rearranging the leaves. You are changing the trunk. And the leaves will answer when their season comes. You do not need to hurry destiny now. You do not need to supervise destiny now. You do not need to check on destiny now. Destiny unfolds naturally when resistance is absent, and resistance has dissolved here. You may notice now that the idea of what if no longer stings. What if belongs to uncertainty. Uncertainty cannot live in this state. It evaporates without conflict. You are not optimistic. Optimism belongs to those who still calculate odds. You are established. Establishment does not gamble. Establishment rests. The silent moment passes without passing. It does not arrive and leave. It installs itself. You are not inside a moment. The moment is now inside you. And from this installation, life will answer in quiet ways, not in miracles that shout, in circumstances that adjust, in people who arrive without drama, in solutions that appear without explanation, in opportunities that feel accidental and yet precise. But tonight you do not need to witness any of that. Tonight is not for seeing. Tonight is for sealing. The rewrite is impressed below conscious inspection. And what is impressed below thought is never undone by thought. Sleep approaches now, not as withdrawal, as descent. And the deeper you descend, the deeper destiny settles into its new alignment. The senses grow dim. The edges of hearing soften. The boundary of the body grows less important. And still, beneath all dimming, something remains absolutely present. The new state, the rewritten condition, the silent authority. You cannot fall out of this. You cannot undo this by sleep. Sleep is the final engraver of assumption. What is carried into sleep as being is carried into tomorrow as life. You did not change destiny with will. You changed the one destiny must answer to. And destiny had no argument. It always yields to state. You are not becoming someone new. You are ceasing to animate the one that created the old fate. And when animation ceases, the story ends. Not in tragedy, in completion. The old destiny does not follow you into this depth. It does not have access to this state. It fades by irrelevance. The new destiny does not announce itself either. It simply begins breathing where you are breathing now. Sleep deepens, weight increases, stillness thickens, and the silent moment expands into rest. You may drift now as one whose fate has already shifted its axis, not in noise, not in force, in silence. And silence is the most reliable sculptor of all. You may rest now. The rewrite is sealed. You are not moving toward your desire now. Movement belongs to those who believe they are far away. You are drifting into a reality that is already present. Not ahead of you, beneath you. Drifting is not effort. Drifting is agreement without tension. The body understands this kind of movement. It feels it when it floats upon calm water. No striving, no resistance, only the quiet intelligence of being carried. And now you are being carried. The breath no longer pulls air inward with urgency. It receives it as though it is guaranteed. Because in this state, nothing is scarce. Not time, not opportunity, not fulfillment. Nothing needs to hurry toward you. You have already arrived. You are not imagining your desire as something distant. You are noticing that the distance itself was imagined. And now that imagining has ended, the desire is not approaching. It is surrounding, it is already part of the atmosphere you are breathing. You may notice now how the idea of someday loses its flavor. It feels thin, unconvincing. Someday belonged to a state where possession was not assumed. You are no longer assuming lack, you are assuming habitation. You have drifted into the reality where your desire is already yours, and this reality does not sparkle with excitement. It settles with familiarity. You do not feel surprised here. You feel at home. The senses grow softer now, not because they fade, but because they no longer need to stand guard at the gates of expectation. Nothing threatens this reality. Nothing contests it. The shoulders drop, not from fatigue, but from relief. Relief that the long reaching forward has ended. Relief that what was once hoped for no longer needs hope. You may sense now that your desire does not stand before you as an object. It does not wait to be touched. It does not present itself for inspection. It has merged with your sense of self. You no longer want it, you are living as the one who has it. And having is quieter than wanting could ever be. Wanting shouts, having whispers, and the whisper is steadier. The mind may try to reach for an image. Let it fail gently. This reality is not built of scenes, it is built of position. You have changed where you stand. And everything now appears differently, because you are standing elsewhere. You did not move through space, you moved through state. And state is the only true geography. The breath deepens again. The body grows heavier in the most comforting way. Not heavy as burden, heavy as something that has settled into its rightful place. You are no longer hovering between worlds. You are resting inside one. In this reality, nothing argues with your worth. Nothing challenges your right to receive. Nothing withholds permission. Permission is assumed. An assumption establishes law. Here, the world does not ask you to justify your desire. It recognizes it as fact. The world only ever responds to the facts you live from. And you are now living from fulfillment. Not later. Now You may notice that the emotion tied to desire feels different here. Not charged, complete. There is no sharp edge to it, no tension beneath it. It does not ache. It does not pull forward. It wraps gently around your being like a familiar garment. You do not reach for it. It simply rests upon you. This is the reality where your desire is already yours. And realities like this do not rush. They continue. You do not need to protect it. Protection belongs to fear. Fear is absent here, not fought, irrelevant. The desire no longer feels fragile. It no longer feels contingent. It no longer depends on outcome. Because it is no longer an outcome. It is a condition. A lived condition. You are no longer living in hope. You are living in knowing. And knowing feels like ground beneath the feet. Solid, quiet, unarguable. The body continues to soften. The edges of thought blur. You may still hear my voice, or it may drift further away. Both are perfect, because this state does not depend on listening. It depends on being, and you are being it now. You have drifted out of the world that required struggle, not by rejecting it, but by ceasing to animate it. The old reality remains for those who still assume it. But you have stepped sideways into another, and another reality answers another state. You did not steal your desire from the old world. You entered the world where it was already yours, and entry required no gate, only allowance. You did not demand it. You agreed with it. Agreement is the deepest creative act. You may notice now that time feels softer. It does not feel like a corridor you must walk. It feels like a wide field you are already standing in. Nothing presses from behind. Nothing pulls from ahead. You are not between before and after. You are inside ownership. Ownership is calm. Ownership does not patrol the future. Ownership does not negotiate with chance. It rests. You may feel now that identity itself has gently reorganized, not redefined, repositioned. You no longer think as the one who desires. You think as the one who remembers having. Memory of possession is far more powerful than imagination of lack. You may notice now that the heart does not lean forward anymore. It beats without agenda. Even the subtle excitement that used to accompany hope is gone, not lost, outgrown. Hope is no longer needed where possession is assumed. Sleep begins to draw closer now, not like a curtain closing, like a tide rising. You do not fall asleep into darkness. You drift deeper into this reality. And this reality does not vanish when the senses dim. It thickens. It embeds. It prints itself more firmly below conscious reach. What is carried into sleep becomes automatic in waking, not by magic, by nature. Nature always continues what consciousness consents to. You have consented to living as one whose desire is already theirs, and now life has no alternative but to answer that consent. You will not need to track how. Tracking belongs to doubt. You will not need to manage when. Managing belongs to insecurity. You will simply notice correspondence. Quiet, ordinary, exact. The world will look the same, but it will answer you differently, because you are not speaking from the same place. You are not moving from the same state. You have drifted, and where you have drifted is where things respond without effort. The breath slows again. The heaviness deepens. The line between waking and sleeping grows thinner. Thought becomes less important. Feeling becomes more real. And the feeling now is simple. It is the feeling of having, not excitement, not pride, not disbelief. Just having, and having is peaceful. You may let go now. There is nothing left to imagine, nothing left to reach for, nothing left to correct. You have already drifted into the reality where your desire is already yours, and that reality will hold you now as you sleep. It will continue when you are no longer aware of continuing. It will answer tomorrow without needing to be remembered. You may rest inside this now. The drifting is complete. There is a door within every being that is never forced open. It does not respond to pressure. It does not yield to will. It waits for the moment when the guard of the mind grows tired of standing watch. It opens only when effort releases its grip. And that moment is always found in sleep. You are nearing that moment now, not through motion, not through intention, not through seeking, through softening. The body no longer carries the posture of defense. The breath has slowed into quiet tides. The muscles no longer anticipate direction. Even the subtle tension behind thought loosens its final threads. You are not traveling inward. You are returning to where you never stopped being. The inner door does not appear before you like an object. It is not seen. It is felt as a shift in gravity within consciousness. A moment where the old weight drops and a new depth opens beneath it. You do not push this door. You outgrow its resistance. And now there is no resistance left. The mind no longer holds its shapes so tightly. Thoughts drift like dim lanterns on distant water. They are present, but they no longer define the shore. You are not following them. You are moving beneath them. And beneath them the door is already opening, not with sound, not with movement, not with drama, with permission. You are not granted entry. You remember that you have always been inside. The sensation of this opening is not excitement. It is not brightness. It is not sudden clarity. It is a widening quiet, a deepening stillness, a feeling as though something vast has leaned closer without touching. The breath grows deeper now. Not because you ask it to be deeper. It deepens because the chest no longer carries the burden of becoming. It no longer needs to prove that it lives. It simply lives. And as the breath sinks, the inner door continues to open without being touched. You may sense now that awareness is shifting its center. The tension is no longer perched at the surface of thought. It slips gently into the space between sensation and meaning, between memory and anticipation, between identity and silence. This is where the door lives. It is not a doorway to another world. It is the doorway beneath this one. The world you have known does not vanish. When this door opens, it loosens, its edges blur, its authority fades. What once commanded your reactions now waits for your permission. And permission is no longer issued through habit. It is issued through state. You are not trying to become receptive. You are already receptive. The door responds to that alone. You may notice now how the idea of inside and outside begins to soften. There is no clear boundary between your being and the atmosphere surrounding you. The sense of separation thins like mist under moonlight. You are no longer enclosed in the body. You are expressing through it. The inner door does not transport you. It expands the room you already inhabit. The old confinement dissolves not by destruction, but by irrelevance. You may not feel like you are entering anything. You may feel like something is finally allowing you to leave. Leave the narrow room of vigilance. Leave the constant checking. Leave the need to define yourself through effort. And as you leave all of that behind, the door opens wider without sound. On the other side of this door, there is no spectacle. There is no throne. There is no reward. There is only space. Space in which all states are accessible. Space in which all assumptions may be selected without resistance. Space in which the soul rests without performing. This is why it opens in sleep, because sleep is the one time you stop performing who you think you are. Now even sleep begins to change its quality. It is no longer collapse. It is descent, not falling downward, entering depth. You may sense now that the old urges to control soften into gentle absence. The need to supervise life dissolves. The impulse to monitor progress fades. And where those impulses once stood, there is now nothing that needs to be done. The door continues to open. And as it opens, it does not reveal things. It removes the barriers to being. You are not shown visions. You are shown allowance. You are not given commands. You are given release. On the other side of this door, you do not become powerful. You remember that power never left. It was only buried beneath effort. You may feel now that the heart no longer contracts around want. Want dissolves, not because it is satisfied, but because it no longer defines you. You are not the one who wants. You are the one who allows, and allowance is the language of the inner door. It does not respond to longing. It responds to surrender. Not surrender of will, surrender of resistance. You are not giving up anything. You are ceasing to hold what was never needed. Now even the concept of destiny feels distant. Destiny belongs to those who wait for doors to open. You are moving with the door as it opens. You no longer ask where it leads. Leads exist only for those who follow. You are not following. You are entering. The moment of entry is not dramatic. It is not marked. It is felt as the instant where the question disappears, where the desire to know what comes next dissolves, where curiosity itself grows quiet. This is the threshold the world never sees, and yet it is the only threshold that matters. The door does not open outward, it opens inward. And inward is not a direction, it is a condition. You may feel now as though everything you once believed was far away feels close without having moved. The future feels nearer without approaching. The past feels lighter without being altered. Even the idea of fate feels more malleable without being threatened. All of this is the effect of the door opening. The door does not bring change, it brings access. You are not changing your life here. You are acquiring entry to where life changes itself through you. The old boundaries of possibility soften, not expanding, dissolving. What once felt unreachable now feels unnecessary to reach, because reach presupposes distance. Distance has thinned. You may sense now that identity itself has grown transparent. The name you answer to feels less binding. The roles you have played feel less certain. They are not erased, they are witnessed as costumes rather than skin. On the other side of the door, you are not a role. You are that which assumes roles, and assumption is creation. Reality answers assumption as echo answers sound, but echo lags. Assumption does not. You are no longer echoing the past, you are sounding the present inwardly. Sleep deepens now, but the door does not close when you sleep. It opens fully. When waking awareness dims, subconscious acceptance becomes sovereign. This is why the door waits for sleep. The waking mind always tries to negotiate. The sleeping mind simply accepts. Acceptance is the key that was never hidden. It was only drowned beneath noise. Now the noise fades. The final threads of waking tension dissolve like mist at dawn. You may feel heavy now, not burdened, anchored, as though something vast has settled into place beneath everything you thought you were. You are not sinking into unconsciousness. You are descending into authority. The authority of assumption without argument. The authority of being without apology. The authority of presence without proof. The door is now open. Not wide in a physical sense, deep in a real sense. And through this opening, life will rearrange itself quietly. Not because you command it, because you have gained access to the level where commands are unnecessary. You will not hear what happens here. You will live it later as coincidence. You will call it timing. You will call it chance. But neither name will be accurate. It will be response. Response to the state you enter now. The door does not ask what you want. It responds to what you are, and you are being something new now. Not by effort, by depth, by release, by sleep. You may drift now completely. Thought may stop forming sentences. Images may fade into soft color. Sound may become distant. The mind may slip into dream. And still, the inner door remains open. It does not close when you forget it. It remains open because you have ceased to resist it. This is not a temporary passage. It is a change of access. You will wake later as one who can no longer fully return to the old confinement. Not because the old path is blocked, because it no longer feels real. The door only ever opens once. After that, it remains invisible but permanent. You may rest now. The opening is complete. And what opens in silence reshapes destiny without noise. Now there is nothing more to reach for, nothing more to adjust, nothing more to complete. It is done, not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because you accepted it. And acceptance is the final act of creation. You no longer need to observe for signs. You no longer need to measure change. You no longer need to verify progress. What has been assumed has already been received. What has been received no longer asks for proof. It rests. And so may you. There is a quiet authority in rest, a certainty that does not argue, a stillness that does not persuade. It simply is. And in this being, the world rearranges itself without announcement. You will not hear the machinery of fate turning. You will not see the gears of circumstance moving. Yet they move. They always move when the state is accepted without resistance. You do not need to check tomorrow. You do not need to watch for outcomes. Outcomes follow states, as shadows follow form, and the state is already set. It has been received without noise. It has been impressed without strain. It has been sealed without ceremony. You may feel the mind drifting now, not as escape, but as return. Returning from effort, returning from vigilance, returning from the long habit of control. The body no longer stands guard at the gates of thought. The gates are open, and nothing threatens what has already been accepted. The breath carries no question. The heartbeat carries no demand. Thought itself grows tender and slow, as if it too has grown tired of striving. It is no longer required. You do not need to remember what was said. You do not need to repeat anything in the morning. You do not need to perform. The seed does not wake up to check if it is growing. The sun does not rise to confirm it is shining. The river does not pause to verify it is moving. So too, your assumption does not need supervision. It moves now by its own law. It unfolds because it has been planted in the only soil that always responds, the feeling of being. You may notice a subtle relief spreading through your chest now. Not excitement, not anticipation. Relief, the relief that comes when responsibility ends. The relief that comes when the burden of making things happen is finally lifted from the shoulders of the mind. You are no longer carrying the future. The future is carrying you, and it carries you gently. There is nothing fragile here. What has been impressed in this quiet is more solid than anything built by effort. Effort collapses. Assumption endures. You may drift now through spaces without name, between waking and sleep, between image and absence, between breath and stillness, between breath and stillness. This is where the deepest work is effortless. Not because it is weak, but because it is unquestioned. You did not convince, you consented. You did not push, you yielded. You did not fight the world, you withdrew your resistance, and in that withdrawal, the world had no opposition left. It will answer, quietly, naturally, in sequences that feel ordinary when they arrive. You will not see fireworks, you will see rearrangements. People will speak differently without knowing why. Doors will appear where struggle once stood. Events will resolve without announcement. You will look back one day and realize that the moment everything changed was not loud. It was silent. It was this. There is no need to be alert now. Awareness may soften. Attention may loosen. Sleep may arrive not as an interruption, but as a continuation of the same state. Sleep is not unconsciousness. Sleep is the mind unguarded. And what enters now enters without contest. So you are free to drift, free to fade, free to sink. Nothing will be lost in the darkness. Everything has already been handed over. You may feel the edges of identity growing thin now. The sense of I must dissolving into it is already. The old rhythm of seeking no longer beats at the center. A new rhythm replaces it, the rhythm of allowance. And allowance is the most fertile ground known to the soul. You do not command the seed while you sleep. You do not coach it. You do not encourage it. You leave it alone. And in being left alone, it organizes itself into fulfillment. So it is with all that has been accepted here. It is organizing now, quietly, faithfully, in its own hidden order. And your only role is no longer to help it. Your only role now is to rest while it happens. It is done. It was accepted. You do not need to look. You do not need to check. You do not need to rehearse. You do not need to protect it. What is accepted in this depth cannot be stolen by surface doubt. Doubt belongs to effort. This belongs to being. You may feel sleep deepen now, like a warm current, pulling you gently downward. There is no falling here, only sinking into safety. The body becomes distant. The breath becomes oceanic. Thought becomes a soft echo far from the center. And still, beneath all fading, the feeling remains. The feeling of completion. The feeling of having. The feeling of safety. The feeling of being guided without being pushed. The feeling of being carried without being held. The feeling of being chosen without being tested. And this feeling does not sleep. It works while you rest. It builds while you forget. It arranges while you dream. You will wake one day and feel different without knowing why. Lighter without knowing when. Calmer without knowing how. That is how it always works. Not with announcements, but with quiet after effects. There is nothing sacred you must guard now. It has already been placed where only life itself can reach it. You released it, therefore it is sealed. You surrendered it, therefore it is secured. You yielded it, therefore it is fulfilled. You may drift now completely. Let the last thread of listening loosen. Let the final attention dissolve. There is nothing further to receive. There is nothing further to prepare. There is nothing further to believe. Because belief has already handed itself over to knowing. It is finished. It is accepted. It is secure. It will answer. You may sleep.